Tim Pool and Sam Seder debate. Now, this is the debate long time coming because I don't know if you guys remember, but Tim Pool had like a block on Sam Seder coming on. He was banned from the show, and now he's not banned. So I want to know why. Let's watch. And of course, I want to see why he didn't want him on. Here we go.
Sam Seder, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you.
That's a good one. I like it. He's got his own beanie.
That's right.
20 years?
What's that?
20 years? Is that?
20-year anniversary. This is actually a gift for you.
Oh, right on.
There you go.
Yeah, I'll put it on the shelf. See all like the weird knickknacks that I have?
Yeah. Well, that's actually for your baby.
Oh, thank you very much.
Congratulations. I understand that you're expecting. Is that right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Nervous.
I hope you're getting sleep.
Oh, I think I got 6 hours tonight.
Well, I'm saying, is your baby born already?
No.
Oh,
Coming soon.
I'm talking about when your child comes.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, what little sleep I already get probably will be less.
All right. Well, there you go.
Right on, man. So we'll start light. What do you think?
Could you imagine your dad beating Tim Pool? My God, I shouldn't be mean. I should shut up. I didn't know. I'm just God. I'm trying to imagine parental intervention, how that works. Okay, let's just get through it. Let's not stop now.
What do you think's going to happen? I mean, the election is Tuesday, but people are already voting.
No, wait. We got to talk about what am I doing here?
Well, sure. I was going to start light, but you can go with whatever you want.
No, I mean, it's light to me. But like, what? I thought I was banned.
Wait, was he not banned?
Didn't you say I was banned and blacklisted?
Yeah, I thought he was.
Maybe. I don't know the specifics. You have to. There's something to that effect.
Well, I can send you a link. But I teed it up here.
By the way, did Sam bring the laptop to put in front of him for the discussion? Because I don't remember other guests that they've had on having that computer that they can access. That's good. That's smart, actually, because you don't necessarily need to have notes or whatever, but having something you can quickly like search up something to make sure that what's being said to you is real, especially on this program, to be blunt. That's useful.
It's hard for me to remember verbatim everything I said, but
what do we got here?
I would say.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you pretty specifically banned.
Did I say no Sam Seder at all?
Well, I think so. Here, wait a second.
Trouble. Sam Seder's blacklisted by a lot of podcasts.
Yeah. Did I say us?
I'm not exaggerating.
The
It's not a
mic.
joke. Yes, there are many large podcasts that have outright said they will never work with him, and it has nothing to do with being afraid to debate him. Sam Seder's off the list. This guy is a manipulative, lying con man.
I mean, that's pretty strong stuff.
My confusion comes from, did I say I would never have you
I
on?
don't have anything to do with him, and that's why Sam Seder makes all these videos, and he focuses on drama. I mean, the man's obsession with Dave Rubin is laughable.
I agree with that to this day.
Oh no, I actually I have a
Did I say
real reason for that.
Did I say?
Yeah,
Did I
of course.
say I would never bring you on?
Oh yeah, you did.
Okay, I might have.
I don't know if I have that specific video teed up. I might though.
I may have. I usually, if I get like heated or something, but I tend not to be as definitive on things like this.
Well, it wasn't just that one time too. When you went on Patrick Bet-David's show, you said the same thing.
Well, but it's true.
What's true?
There are a lot of big shows that have blacklisted you.
Oh, I have no doubt.
It's not about you, nobody wanting to debate you. I mean, the first thing I asked was like, let's talk about the issues, and you immediately pulled up drama. That's
not drama. I mean, I think everybody wants to know. It's like a weird. If you.
Okay, so Sam does cover like other content creators and like feuds in the righty space or goofy stuff other people do, and he talks about other commentators instead of just focusing on the news. He also does the news. He also brings experts on. He also brings authors on, and he talks about the news. Most of his show is that, but he does do that, and those videos tend to do good. There's an incentive to do them. Everyone feels that incentive. I feel that incentive.
I used to be a script writer, and if you put a loaded gun,
usually I stay away from the drama stuff, but he doesn't do it too bad, and he has a lot of news. And so, for me, muzzle tough. Off to you.
In the first scene, and you don't resolve it, people are going to be distracted. So this way we can just deal with this, get that out of the way, and then move on to stuff that is more, I think, like substantive.
Yeah. But that's it, right? It's not my business to tell other shows that have brought it up. But
I'm not concerned about other shows. I know why. I'm just curious. What am I doing here?
What are you doing here?
Yeah,
I decided to have you on. I don't know. I figured there were probably misconceptions you had about me. I think that a lot of what you think about what I say comes from clips and not the actual show. So there's like,
I don't really have conceptions of you.
This started because you said something that was untrue about my position on the death penalty, and I was like, I think Sam saw a clip that someone pulled out of context and didn't actually hear like my 2-hour diatribe on.
Yeah, no, I don't. I think actually what I was talking about, I don't think I ever said whether you believe in the death penalty or not. I mean,
you cited a quote where you said that I said something like,
I cited a quote, or did I play a video?
At the beginning of a video, Tim Pool agrees that people who commit treason should get the death penalty, which is
that right? Do you have the video? You must have the video. No? Oh, wait a second.
And I just went, holy crap. And
let me see if I got it, because I'm pretty sure I remember this.
By the way, Laura Loomer, if she says that people who commit treason should get the death penalty, to be clear, she's not like meaning, oh my gosh, this military officer sold secrets to China. She means like Adam Schiff. Laura Loomer's a loon. She's a loon. She's crazy. She's off the deep end, deeper than the deep end can go. I remember that dumb knuckle-dragging window licker talking about Ukraine, and this story she did where she found this random neo-Nazi covered in swastikas, and he said, yeah, I was in Mariupol. I was with Azov. And she did like a 20-part like series on Twitter, paragraph after paragraph after paragraph, and she posted these IDs that were supposedly from him and these pictures where he was there, and they were all photoshopped, and it was all fake. That dude was not in Mariupol. Well, no, he's not in Mariupol. How did he get out? Mariupol was surrounded on all sides. They evacuated the wounded. The people who got out of Mariupol, I know a few of them. Those guys are killers, the guys who were somehow able to sneak out of that place. You think this random neo-Nazi covered in swastikas would have been able to sneak out amongst the civilian population? You can't have swastikas all over your face and be like, yeah, I'm just a farmer. I just farm beets. Can I go? I'm a sunflower guy. Come on. Let me get back to my sunflower fields. She was such a dingbat.
It was in the context of you suing Kamala Harris.
And
you were on with Laura Loomer.
Right.
And you said the words.
Here we go.
People who get the death penalty, people who commit treason should get the death penalty.
What's the context of that sentence?
What's the context of that sentence?
Right. So there's a clip that's 5 seconds long.
Oh, no, but I watched the whole rest of it. Like, I know you went back and forth, but it was so weird, because you should really, if you can find this and put this up, because what I found fascinating about it was that you literally did say on multiple times in that going back and forth, because apparently what happened is you got in trouble at one point with, I don't know, some streaming service about people calling for the death penalty or whatever it was. I don't know the background of that.
YouTube says you can't call for the death penalty as a legal mechanism.
Okay. And so she brought up, I think these people committed treason. They should get the death penalty. And you said,
well, I don't know if she said, I think
I don't care what she said, really, for this sake. But I'm quite sure you said, if you commit treason, you should get the death penalty. Now,
what words are you missing from that sentence? Because it sounds like you just heard a clip.
No. I watched the whole thing.
Okay, well then,
at one point afterwards,
let's pause. We'll break this down. We'll break this down.
Sure.
Is it currently codified in law that if you commit treason, you are out, the penalty is death?
What do you mean by codified?
Like, is U.S. law states that the penalty for treason is death?
Not necessarily, but it is one.
It is, right. The penalty for treason is death.
What is the penalty for murder?
It varies.
It can be the death penalty.
Exactly.
So it's the exact same dynamic as treason.
Yes. So if we're talking about, in that context, people levying war against the United States.
Okay, let's find the clip. No, I don't want this to be just like up for debate or whatever. Let's find the thing where they cut the feed because they're calling for like, let's go, execute all the evil traitor Dems.
Should Democrats be in jail? No question. When Donald Trump gets elected, should he start locking them up? No question. Should there be lists of Democrats that need to go to jail? 100%. And the reason for that is they've committed crimes.
I really liked that, Tim's calling for the depoliticization of the Justice Department.
We need to make sure that when Donald Trump wins...
Don't say lists then. Then name the person who committed the crime, clearly define the crime. When you start talking about lists of Democrats to arrest, it's a political witch hunt. It sounds like a political witch hunt. You can't make it sound like anything else.
We've got an attorney general, a deputy attorney general, a head of the CIA and the FBI. Kash Patel would be fantastic. We can have attorney general. There's some names floating around. And then they can start having their investigators and the feds issuing subpoenas, pulling up evidence, and with real evidence, bring them.
Kash Patel is one of the people being considered, for, I believe, for CIA head. I forget exactly. But I believe it's CIA head, who has said, like, yes, we're going to go out. We're going to arrest. Wait, 1 second. Let me make sure that I'm talking about the right guy. Kash Patel. Yep, I'm thinking of the right guy. He's the former chief of staff to the Secretary of Defense.
2 judges for warrants. Then these people can spend three years of their lives fighting tooth and nail for the crime against...
Oh, you're right. He does have one of the worst photos out of all of the people I've ever seen taking a government photo, Kash Patel. I don't know what you think is a bad photo for to having your ID, but look at this. I can't place this emotion. He's looking at me the way I imagine a lizard would look at a fly.
When Donald Trump gets elected, should he start locking them up? No question. Should there be lists of Democrats that need to go to jail? 100%. And the reason for that is they've committed crimes. We need to make sure that when Donald Trump wins, we've got an attorney general, a deputy attorney general, a head of the CIA and the FBI. Kash Patel would be fantastic. We can have attorney general. There's some names floating around. And then they can start having their investigators and the feds issuing subpoenas, pulling up evidence, and with real evidence, bring them to judges for warrants. Then these people can spend three years of their lives fighting tooth and nail for the crime against the government for crimes they committed, and we can prove. Yeah. And the reason why we put them on trial is that we can show the whole world we will uncover what you've done. We will make sure everyone knows, and you will be held accountable for it.
Not just jail, they should get the death penalty. We actually used to have the punishment for treason in this country.
And then the feed cut. Chop. I don't hear a call for the death penalty here. It seems like he just wanted to jail those criminal Dems. But maybe I'm missing another part.
Don't believe any of these people committed treason.
Correct.
Sedition would be trying to undermine or cause damage to the government.
Correct.
Treason,
that's not the issue.
Right. And so the context of that conversation is, one, I don't agree with the death penalty. And in no circumstances.
But you did say the words. If you committed treason, you should get the death penalty.
Okay. So once again, do you not understand?
Would you agree if someone commits murder, they should?
Wait, did he? Because I didn't hear it in the clip, but maybe it was said at some other time. I don't know.
Should get the death penalty?
No.
I agree with that.
Right.
But you did say if they commit treason, they should get the death penalty.
So if we're talking about the penalty for levying war against a country, whether you want it to or not, if a judge sentences someone to death, should they get the death penalty?
I don't think people should get the death penalty under any circumstances.
If someone is shooting at another person, should they be shot at and killed?
That's not what the death penalty is. The death penalty is after you've gotten somebody and you've contained them. The threat is contained, and then you punish them. You punish them with death. You snuff out their life. When somebody's shooting at you and you shoot back at them, you're defending yourself. They're not contained. They're a threat to you, your family, the community, and you're eliminating that threat. You're eliminating that threat in a violent manner, but you do what you have to do to protect, family, house, and home. You do what you have. World's a tough place, but once you've arrested somebody and you put them in a cell, I don't see a criminal justice reasons for the death penalty unless you can prove that it deters crime, and I think there's a lot of data that suggests that it doesn't really do so that effectively.
If someone's shooting at another person, should they be shot at
Yeah,
and killed?
if someone is committing an act of violence and actively, is it within the legal rights of a person to return with lethal force?
You mean self-defense?
Yes.
I think so, yeah.
Right now, whether you want it to or not, if someone robs a liquor store, should they go to jail?
Should they go to jail?
Under the current laws, regardless of your opinions, should the police arrest the person?
Should the people arrest the person for robbing a liquor store?
Yes.
I mean, I think they should, yes.
Do you think in literally every single circumstance, then, no matter what happens if someone commits a robbery, they should be arrested?
I mean, I suppose there could be extenuating circumstances, but yes, if you commit a crime, you should be arrested.
So the clarification that I'm trying to make, it's not about, I don't think there's any real reason to try and go back and parse semantics. The concept was, if people are levying war against the United States, such as we're on the battlefield somewhere in Iraq or whatever, right?
Wait, this whole thing was about treason, where you were saying that...
Do you want me to explain the ideas, or do you want to just go in circles? I don't understand.
Well, I want you just to address what I'm talking about.
I'm trying
instead
to.
of talking about...
I feel like I don't know if I'm as lost as Sam here, but I don't see the point he's getting to. I thought he was trying to compare, like, shooting back at a guy to the death penalty. Doesn't seem like that was his point. Well, I don't know. We'll see where it ends up.
War. All right, go ahead, please.
Treason is levying war.
Treason is levying war?
Or providing aid to the enemy of the United States in a time of war.
Well, it also, you can be, I mean, there's been people who have been charged with treason when we're not in an active war, but yes, I guess.
Yeah, like there's been spies that have been charged with treason between wars.
I mean, but however you want to parse this, treason is a legal charge.
Like, and also, it doesn't need to even be like a foreign government. If I was to get a bunch of my friends together, and I was like, that's it, we're creating the twink states of America. We're creating a whole new hierarchy here, and we try to like storm buildings with guns, and we all get arrested. We committed treason.
Against somebody, and there are multiple potential penalties for that. One of which includes capital punishment, and
just for the sake of clarity, because in the show we're not talking about specifics of someone may or may not be wrongly charged. If you're asking me why I would say something like should be, it's rooted in this: treason against the United States shall consist only in levying war against them or in adhering to their enemies, giving them aid and comfort. No person shall be convicted of treason unless on the testimony of two witnesses of the same overt act or confession in open court. So the issue at hand was, when we were talking and I said, I don't think any of these people committed treason. I don't think anything they've done is worthy of death. I don't agree with the death penalty. The return is, but what if they're levying war against us? And then someone decides their life should be forfeit.
I watched that video, and in fact, I remember this now, actually. We were going over the ridiculousness of your lawsuit, and I said, you know, Tim says he doesn't agree with the death penalty. That's fine. And then they played more where you say, if you've committed treason, you should get the death penalty. I mean, and the interesting thing is, then I watched, hold on, let me finish. And
do you want to do a drama circle jerk, or do you want to actually talk about the ideas of the death penalty and what should or should not happen?
No, I think that I personally am against the death penalty. I think
so
you are maybe against the death penalty.
I'm 100% against death penalty.
But what I found fascinating, it was as if you watch that video as it goes further along, and maybe you can release it. I don't know if it's behind a paywall or what. I watched it somewhere, so I know it exists. Maybe it was on Rumble. And if you go along, it's almost like you catch yourself and you realize, like, wait a second, I'm against the death penalty. So, no, you shouldn't get capital punishment. And that's one of the things that I think, like, in terms of, like, that I have always found fascinating about you. And that there was actually a great video by Timba Toast on how you vacillate between different political ideas as a way of, like, maintaining a certain brand.
What is the brand?
Well, I'm not exactly sure what you think the brand is, but
here's the challenge. You know, if I post a joke on X that is like over the top, for instance, I tweeted Kamala Harris is like Hitler and Stalin times 200, and she's gonna start 800 wars. That was actually written about in various liberal outlets as if it was a fact statement. And so I'm sitting here being like, can they not tell? Well, there's Poe's law. I get it. Sometimes they don't. But the issue at hand right now is just semantics. So instead of saying like, well,
dude, we're in the communication business. Like, our words are important. Now, listen,
Sure.
I certainly understand people misinterpreting a tweet. Believe me, I've been there.
I will just say this for the sake of clarity. Right now, regardless of my opinions on law, should the law be that someone will receive the death penalty, then they should receive it. I oppose it.
But it doesn't necessarily, the treason, the punishment for treason is not necessarily the death penalty any more than it is with murder.
All right, so let's just try and...
Why would you ever say, if you're against the death penalty...
Once again, misconception I'm trying to get past, so let me explain.
Okay.
In the circumstance where someone has committed a death-worthy trespass, I oppose the death penalty. I would advocate against it. We recently had a big case where there were 2 instances where people were put to death. One guy, the family even said it shouldn't happen. They had cut a deal with the prosecutor. It still happened. And that was, I believe it was, who was that? That was Missouri. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people who watch my show were quite outraged that a family would say no. But the issue at hand is, I don't assert myself over the rest of the country in law, which means if the mechanism of the courts is as such, that's what should happen. I will fight against it. That's the semantic misunderstanding.
Oh, all right.
Let's just put it like this.
Because you were so offended. I mean, the reason why I thought I was here was because you were so offended that I said you were against the death penalty.
You said I was for it.
And I got confused when you said someone should get the death penalty
under a mechanism of law that I oppose.
Well, you never said those words.
But that was the whole conversation.
No, actually it wasn't.
Literally was.
We can play it.
But I mean, look, how about we just, instead of going back and forth and saying it was this show where these things were said, we lay it out on the table, there it is.
Okay, there.
Death penalty should be opposed.
We agree on that.
The government is a failed arbiter of who should live or die. This mechanism doesn't work at an institutional level.
I don't know that anybody is a arbiter of who should live or die, but yes.
Excuse me. There is some context that is more challenging, such as if a man pointed a weapon at your would you decide that he should die?
I mean, if someone pointed a weapon at my children, I would attempt to do whatever I needed to do to stop them. But that's different
up to and
than
including lethal force.
I mean, if that's what it took, of course.
So that is you making the decision that you will take action which may lead to the death of an individual.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I would suffer the consequences, but I don't believe in general that in capital punishment. I mean, that's not capital punishment. That's
I agree. I'm just saying
self-defense or
in certain circumstances, a person will decide someone may be about to die. And there's other issues, of course, like.
But again, it's if I knew 100% with no threat to my life that I could restrain somebody and not have to kill them, then I don't think there would really be much of a moral argument for arguing for killing people in that circumstance. But you can't. If a stranger comes into your home, you don't know what they have on them. Do they have a gun? Do they have a knife? What are their intentions? Are they here just to steal the TV, or are they here to kill you and, do some funny business with whatever? Who cares? It could be anything. And it's that fear of the unknown that leads to people, defending themselves with the Second Amendment. Whereas if somebody's in a cell, dressed in, prison garb, under lock and key and surveillance 24/7, they're not a threat in the same way. So, I mean, the factors here are completely different. The factors you consider when shooting somebody and executing somebody is totally different.
Whether to render medical aid is a different circumstance.
For example, in war, shooting a POW versus shooting, a soldier with a gun, is treated differently for good reason.
If someone is already dying, then there's if someone is in peril but you can't save them. But in terms of a human being making an active decision to end someone's life, there are many circumstances where someone will decide that they are the arbiter of that decision. Police officers do it every day. Soldiers do it every day. And often regular people. We have the Penny trial in New York right now, where they've got the trial going on for the Daniel Penny in New York, where he put that guy in the chokehold and the guy died. He made that decision at that point.
He killed the guy.
He did, and he made that decision for whatever reason. I am going to apply this technique to this man. May result in death. So at a certain point, someone makes that choice. The question then is, do we agree that the choice was necessary or that they were backed into a corner? And that's a difficult decision. So I would just put it this way. I think in a perfect world...
This has nothing to do with capital punishment, though.
It's about whether someone chooses someone else should die.
Right, but that has nothing to do with capital punishment.
They share
Capital punishment is
they share
definitionally
someone choosing to die.
a punishment that is put out by the government, as opposed to, you know, an individual's decision as to whether or not they're going to apply lethal force to somebody. It has nothing to do with it. You would never say
they're literally
that Penny provided capital punishment to that guy on the subway, because
anyone's making that argument.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It has nothing to do with capital punishment.
Just in the sense that someone's making a decision over someone's death. And the question being, in the case of self-defense, I agree there are circumstances. And in the case of capital punishment, I agree there are no circumstances.
Okay.
I don't believe there's a reality where the government has successfully subdued an individual who they are no longer a threat, and then they just decide 20 years later, now let's kill the person. That makes no sense to me.
Yeah, I know. I agree. I do not believe that we should have capital punishment. I do not believe in the death penalty.
How do we stop it?
Well, I mean, there have been times in the past where we've come close, I think. Sadly, I think because of all of the ginned up stuff about crime in this country over the past couple of years, I think we're moving in the wrong direction. I think the Democrats actually took it out of their platform this year that they're against the capital punishment. It is a problem. There is a cost associated with the attempts to scare people about crime in this country, and that's one of the costs, that we move further away from some type of positive public policy.
4% of death row inmates are likely innocent. And that means at an institutional level, people in this country accept 4 in 100 people will be murdered by the state, unjustly killed for a sense of security. I reject that outright.
Yeah, I mean, I think both
Wow, a bipartisan agreement. Shut it down, end the podcast. Let's all go home. Good talk. Good stream.
terms of efficacy, but even in terms of, I think, if you feel that there is a situation wherein, without a threat to anybody, right? I mean, these people are all in jail, that there is a justification to kill someone in cold blood, then I think it just becomes a negotiation as to when it's not.
You know what really gets me too is what I hear from a lot of people is, what about when you know? You've seen on video they're harming a child or they're doing something. And it's funny because in a circumstance where an individual literally witnesses a crime happening, it's easy to say, sure, we can, like if you're out in public and you see someone committing an egregious crime that you know is going to cause great bodily harm or death. But why does that justify an institutional, national level mechanism by which the government can decide that someone dies? I think it comes down to 12 people walk into a room, someone they've never met before points to a person they've never met and they say, trust me, kill him. And these people are like, well, sure, I guess. I think that's insanity.
No, I agree. Yeah. I mean, you brought up the penny thing, and I think, that's why it's even that much more egregious, in my opinion.
I mean, war is just that on a much grander scale, killing a bunch of men you never met, don't know.
His killing of that.
But I mean, war is crazy.
Man, because I don't believe in that situation there was any type of threat that justified holding this guy in a chokehold for that many minutes at all, frankly, for that matter.
What do you think, like the penalty should be? Like, do you think, like, they're charging him, I think, with negligent? Is it negligent homicide? I'm not sure.
At the very least, I would imagine manslaughter. But in generally, as a rule, I don't really parse out court cases. I mean, if there's a charge, as a matter of public policy, there are instances where I think that people should be charged. But beyond that, then I just, I didn't even watch the OJ trial.
I'm curious about your thoughts on this story. This is from NBC News from 2021. Police say riders didn't help woman raped on train because of the bystander effect. Explain why. Does the bystander effect explain why? Philadelphia police said riders did not call 911, instead held their cell phones up in direction of the assault. In a circumstance like this was a huge story. 40 minutes, a woman was harassed by a stranger on a public train and then raped while bystanders just watched. What would you do? Like, what do you think a person should do in a circumstance like that?
At the very least, I would call 911.
That's correct. Yeah, right. Nobody did.
And over.
Is that true? For fourth, a woman's harassed by stranger on public train and rape while bystanders held up to Sanford, seemingly to record the assault. It happened last Wednesday night at a city transit system. So the incident led to calls from the police urging public to be our partners and to watch out for other riders. After officials said passengers did not physically intervene or call out 911. Either call the cops or beat the dude half to death. I mean, that's like the only options that I would see. My God, how do you just record it?
What would you do? Like, what do you think a person should do in a circumstance like that?
At the very least, I would call 911.
That's correct. Yeah, right. Nobody did.
And over the course of 40 minutes, I mean, I'm not familiar with this story, but if I watched someone being assaulted,
Raped.
and then, or raped,
Yeah.
yes, I would intervene. I would push that person away. I would attempt to stop them from raping that person.
I think anybody should.
What has that got to do with this?
Well, we've got two extremes, I suppose, right? With Neely, you've got a woman who said that she felt like her life was in danger. This is one of the witnesses.
Well, we've seen that. I mean, there were people all around there, and the idea that she felt like her life was in danger. I mean, she's not communicating that to the guy, to Neely. B,
She said
it was quite clear. It was quite clear that I don't know, minute 2, minute 3, minute 4, that this person is not going to end up killing that person. I would imagine that if this guy attempted to assault her anymore, Neely could have pushed him away, or they could have held them down. But a chokehold is a lethal thing, and he held it for minutes.
Do you think that you would wait until the woman was being raped before you would intervene?
Probably not.
But how would you know then if the guy is like a threat unless he's actively committing harm?
Well, I mean, if he's like actively committing harm, there's
Those of you who don't know the story, there was a guy on a train in New York City, I believe. I think it was New York. Yeah, it was New York. And there was another person who was like acting erratically and giving what you would call as like a train outburst. There's people who have got a ton of mental problems using public transportation and acting in a horrible manner. And then somebody put him in a chokehold. Daniel Penny, I believe his name was, put him in a chokehold and then choked him to death. And hold him in a chokehold for like 5 or 6 minutes, like a crazy amount of time. I have no problem with if somebody's acting erratically or like threatening people to restrain them, but I don't see how like choking them to death was necessary. I'm not laughing because it's funny. I'm laughing because it's ridiculous. You choke somebody for 6 minutes and then expect them to stand up.
I would assume. I'm not familiar with that story, but I would assume that it would start out where the guy is physically assaulting her, holding her down or whatnot. And I think at that point I would go and intervene. But I think the problem in this instance, and again, like, the guy's been charged. That's basically where my interest, I move on to other things. But in an instance where you're putting someone in a chokehold, which again, he's trained. He's a
Marine, right?
Yeah, he must know this is a lethal thing. You're putting someone in a chokehold for 5 or 6 minutes. I think that's a problem.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I have no idea. I see both stories, and it seems like they're both on the ends, right? Jordan Neely didn't do anything.
To be clear, like Neely, the guy on the floor, like he was, according to like police testimony, I believe, he was saying stuff like, "I'll go to jail. I'll die for this. I'll die for that." Whatever about, I don't know. I mean, he was acting erratic. He was like, I think that him being restrained makes sense. It's just the length of the chokehold that baffles me.
Anything. people may have claimed they have felt threatened. In this regard, it's a woman who was quite literally raped. In one instance, you have intervention.
People aren't even calling 911. I mean, I don't know what's going on there. Yeah, that's absurd.
I know, it's a crazy story.
I think, there's... I don't think you
well,
have to have too nimble or nuanced of a brain to say there's a difference between watching someone get raped and not calling 911 and putting someone in a chokehold for 6 minutes. I feel like there's a...
You can at least call 911.
Yeah, these are pretty wide disparities. This is not...
That's what I mean, like on the extreme ends.
Right.
You get these stories where it's no intervention to the extreme degree and then intervention to a person's death.
Right.
And it's like maybe we don't see the stories of any kind of in-between because they're not sensational, right? Like I'm sure something happened on a train recently in New York where someone, like the guy was getting violent, he got shoved, everything stopped. You know what I mean? No one, NBC News is never going to carry the story because there's nothing extreme about it. And so we only ever get these edge cases which put people on one side or the other.
Yeah. I mean, stuff happens in the subway all the time.
New York's been getting pretty wild. I suppose it's relative to the amount of crime, but...
Been getting wild in what way?
There were, I think, last year, like 25 people were pushed in front of trains?
I mean, I can tell you that crime...
25. Does seem like a big number. But New York's a giant city.
New York City is...
I don't know what like the relative average person pushed in front of train rate is. That's a weird thing to say out loud, but I just don't know.
I mean, down still around historic lows. I mean, I'm old, so I remember New York in the late 80s. And, I mean, it's...
Wow.
It's like
3 years ago. Sorry, I was wrong. Yeah, it was in 2022. I think it was.
Oh, well, I mean, listen, during COVID, we had a once in a lifetime event, hopefully, knock on wood. And a lot of things got messed up, but crime is back down. You know, the only crime that has gone up, which is fascinating. And for all of the BS that we heard over the past couple of years about, shoplifting and smash and grab and all that. Do you know what the one major crime that is up? The most statistically? It's actually shoplifting. Shoplifting went up in 2023, and it is now because it went down during COVID. So as much as we heard, and I know you've talked about this quite a bit, and I think it's been misrepresented in a lot of respects, that all of the shoplifting was up and people are gone mayhem. It's crazy. It was actually below where it was in 2019, and it is now back up to where it was in 2019.
I think,
and because COVID was, screwed up with our society so much. But again, you ask me, why are we going the wrong direction with capital punishment? I would say it is the absolute BS that has been shoveled. I don't watch your show enough to know, although I've seen people on here who, when Emma was on, who promote this idea that there was like this explosion of crime. And in fact, what ends up happening is that, yes, during COVID, there was a spike. And now we're back down. And the only thing that is back at 2019 levels is actually shoplifting, because it had gone down and it's gone back up because we're back to normal.
So I'm trying to pull up the Marshall Project. This is a good one. So we had these, this was the story that happened, and this is what's a cause for contention. The FBI released crime data showing that crime had gone down. And, during the presidential debates, David Muir fact-checked Donald Trump saying, actually, crime is down. However, recently, the FBI released new crime data showing that actually it was up. It was up, I believe, 4.5%.
When? What year?
The year prior, 2021.
That it was up.
Yeah. So the latest data that we have.
But we knew. No, it was actually 2022. We knew. We knew. Yeah, it was 2022.
I'm sorry, the increase from 2021.
Yeah.
Yeah.
During COVID. In the wake of COVID, 2022 was up because the data reporting was not complete. But if you look at 2023 data, which is now they have got enough of the police departments online that 94 point, I don't know, something of the country is covered, you will find that crime is down in 2023.
So do you think, I think one of the issues...
We had a...
The problem... Okay, by the way, I'm not against these people discussing this. But if you're running for president of the United States, or you're running for a national office, I would I would advise that you could talk about crime rates coming down because of your actions as a county councilor, or, you know, mayor or whatever, or governor. But I would also advise not to be like, oh, this is just nonsense about the crime. You could say, like, it's the crime rates you're suggesting are not true. But the problem that I think people face, and it's the same issue with improvements in the economy that are going to be seen on the individual level largely in the long term, is that these could trump these statements. No, these statements couldn't trump. These statements won't trump, will not overcome personal experience. If you get mugged in an alleyway, somebody can quote crime data at you all day. You got mugged in an alleyway. That's your personal experience. That's more real than any graph you can see on TV. Same thing when it comes to any economic woes you could be feeling. For example, high amounts of credit card debt, which is a problem in this country.
A rise because of COVID, and now it's dropping back down. But again, let's also be clear on this. If you compare 1990 crime with today, it's basically like this. It's just straight down on that.
You want to know something interesting? You know what one of the biggest factors in the decline in murder is? Cell phones. So back in the day, in the 90s, if somebody got stabbed, somebody had to run to a payphone to try and call 911, and that created a massive gap between first response and medical treatment. And so around the time cell phones came out, you see a massive drop in murder charges and homicides. People immediately started thinking like, wow, crime is down. And it's like, well, no, look at the crime data. It is down, it is going down, but it's not the same. There's a decline in crime and a sharp decline in murder because now people were instantly calling 911 and first responders were arriving on scene much more quickly. So that's
okay. But also the other part was, yeah, I mean, that's interesting.
Crime's been going down.
Crime has been going down. I mean, you know.
I mean, that's good. I don't see how that's a counterance to crime coming down. Technological developments assumedly would help catch criminals more, yeah.
There's a lot of theories about it. I happen to think it's a function of lead, to be honest with you.
I agree. Lead and gasoline.
Lead and gasoline and lead regulation. It's another.
Honestly, I've never looked into it before. How much of the lead stuff is true, and how do you even test for that? That taking lead out of paint so the kids are not like eating the lead chips and, you know, becoming a little funky in the head and then feeling like, oh, there's some good lead. I'm gonna go stabbing. I'm not saying I don't believe it. I just wonder how people would even test that. How you would even test, like, would it be like you would compare neighborhoods that of similar socioeconomic conditions and see the ones that have more lead paint and less lead paint and then compare it? Or I just have no clue how you even test that. But Dylan, lead tastes so good. Man, you're right. It's the good stuff. It's the good stuff.
Example of strong government regulation bringing about benefits that we couldn't even imagine.
I agree. What do you think? I don't understand the mechanism by which lead made crime happen. I saw the reports though, where
I mean, lead is a neurotoxin, and if you have brain damage, you're more likely to be maybe violent or
leaded gasoline. Okay, got you.
Antisocial.
That's crazy.
I'll try not to drink leaded gasoline.
Lead is a neurotoxin, and if you have brain damage, you're more likely to be maybe violent or antisocial.
That's crazy. Like in the 70s when we had...
That's why they talk about like football players like with terrible brain damage. Like people talk about these cases with these football players no, that's an even better example. Some people theorize that, oh God, I can't believe I forgot his name. Any wrestling fan will immediately know who I mean. Who's the murdery WWE star? The one that murdered his wife and kid? Chris Benoit. I didn't even say it yet. Oh my God. Somebody in chat, 30 seconds before I even said it, say Chris Benoit. My God, you guys know where my head's at immediately. But yeah, Chris Benoit murdered his wife and kid after a long time in service in the WWE, wrestling. One of the best wrestlers in the world. Still, I mean, if you go back and watch those tapes, amazing skill. He murdered his wife and kid. And people theorize to this day, why did he do it? Nobody can figure it out. One of the theories is that he busted up his brain so much wrestling and got brain damage, and that affected his mood, possibly like steroids uses, stuff like that. But one of the theories is brain damage, and because like brain damage can affect you in that way. It's the same issue with football players.
Had leaded gasoline and it's just pumping out of all these cars. Like people are effectively having some kind of effect on their brain that
it aggregates, and so if you are living in areas that had a lot of lead paint, hadn't been remediated, and on top.
All right, somebody just gave me some information in chat from Snegglepuss. What a name. The lead theory is based on the laws limiting it came in, and a decade later things started getting better. Really? Hey, the markets are up. It must be that lead paint we got rid of. Yeah. No, I'm just messing with you. But yeah, okay, I got you.
Top of that, you're getting gasoline that's in the air, or I should say lead that is, in the air because of gas, that accumulates in your brain, and it creates neurotoxin. That's why we have that problem in Flint, Michigan,
right,
with the lead poisoning. We have a lot of children, who have special needs, and there is data. I mean, this is it's very difficult to assess this stuff, but there's data that shows that about 20 years after lead gasoline is outlawed, or lead in gasoline is outlawed, you see a precipitous drop in crime. This happened both internationally and in this country.
What do you think about phthalates? Are you familiar?
No.
So plastic chemicals leaching into our food.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Even these cans. So I'm going to give a shout out to Liquid Death. They'll get mad at me, I guess. So Liquid Death is water in cans, and it says death to plastic, but every single aluminum can is lined with plastic. So it's all leaching into our, even these midriffs. They say they're endocrine disruptors. So they're affecting people's hormone regulation, hormone balance. This could lead to, depending on the study, hormone imbalance could lead to like emotional disturbances or dissociative or like identity issues.
This is one of the reasons why, since we are a couple of days away from an election, why I think it's so important to make sure that Donald Trump is not in a position to...
Oh, no. Oh, no. Oh, no. This broadcast was recorded on November 1st. Sam. Oh, poor Sam. You're lucky, Sam. You don't know the world you're waking up to in 4 days, Sam. This is a totally different world, Sam. Tulsi Gabbard is in charge of intelligence now. Matt Gaetz is the pick for for AG. It's a different world. We got a guy who almost murdered a drummer with an axe for defense secretary. It's a different world, Sam. Aries 385, thank you for the 4 months. Tier 2. Lead products also was the reason for violence in the Roman Empire during the end of the empire's run. Now that you mention it. Did you know at the NSDP headquarters, Nazi headquarters, lead walls. Makes you think.
To make sure that Donald Trump is not in a position to appoint any more Supreme Court justices. I mean, the damage has been done, but it could be rectified, because one of the things that this Supreme Court has done in its assault on what is known as the Chevron doctrine and and deference is it will over time.
Rip Sam's mom? What happened to Sam's mom? Sam's mom died the next day. Sam's mom died on November 6th? Oh my gosh. What a terrible 48 hours. Well, that's awful. I'm really sorry to hear that. Man, I've been there, man. It sucks when your mom dies.
Inhibit the ability of something like the EPA or the USDA or the FDA from assessing in real time that there is a problem with certain products that is poisoning our environment or poisoning our people, and it will inhibit their ability to address it, because we don't know.
No, the day after the interview. Oh, so the day after this. Oh my gosh. Man, that's rough.
In the future, and certainly, and if what chemicals, we discovered this over time, right? We didn't know this when plastics are fantastic, and then we start to realize there's these PFAS, there's these things that you mentioned. Maybe in the context of fracking, there are certain things leaching into water, but you probably know that you can't just there's no I test water and then all the bad stuff comes back on the test sheet. You must look for specific things. Well, what this Supreme Court has done is inhibited, and this actually is even a problem for investors like the SEC and other agencies.
This is like them having an actual conversation right now, by the way. This is not even, they've moved away from hostile confrontation to lead gasoline is bad. And, it's simple agreements that we're basing it off of, kids shouldn't drink lead and, health is important. But it's something, you're building some consensus somewhere.
They have inhibited the ability of these agencies to do their work as scientists, as financial regulators, find problems that exist that were not contemplated by Congress and act upon them. Because Congress doesn't have the ability, to act on every single or anticipate every single substance that may be a problem for people
high fructose corn syrup.
I mean, that's also a problem. That was under the Nixon administration.
Hey, you know how we were just talking about earlier today, how Matt Gaetz is actually going to end the ethics probe into the sex trafficking allegations, all that, because of the interaction with the underage girl. Because he's leaving to become Attorney General, and by resigning, the ethics probe no longer has authority. Well, apparently, the House Ethics Committee, the House Ethics Committee, was scheduled to vote in 2 days, 48 hours, to release the quote-unquote highly damaging report on its investigation into Matt Gaetz. Gaetz's resignation means the ethics panel loses its jurisdiction, effectively ending the probe. Man, if I've ever wanted something to leak more in my life, it is that report. Somebody, somewhere, please, if you wish upon a star, it doesn't matter where you are.
They wanted to increase the amount of money that expendable money that people had, so they decided to subsidize corn and make all the food cheaper. But
isn't it weird how the high fructose corn syrup things happens? They subsidize corn, so then these researchers are like, corn's so cheap now because it's being paid for by the by taxpayers that we can produce. It's actually difficult to make high fructose corn syrup. It's more expensive than sugar, but the government subsidy has resulted in
100%. It's also the filler in all our foods.
Yeah. I was reading something recently that said that the high colon cancer rate among young people is due to emulsifiers. They're using like gellan gum and guar gum and these things in dairy products. So, or not even just dairy products, but like to make it seem like it's fatty. And so you're actually just eating this like gum stuff that gunks up your insides. I don't know how you appropriately regulate or deal with things like that, because it's like you're saying, we don't know what it's going to do until we have all this data and research for a long period of time.
I mean, we could regulate against.
D5D2D Derek has donated $5.
$5.
One silver lining of an RFK FDA is that he's not some Project 2025 goon who would pull approval for abortion drugs.
Yeah, but okay. Remember at the end of the Trump administration when like all that staff was like threatening to quit because he was going to fire this guy and that guy, and he was just running roughshod, and then somebody probably went to Trump and said legacy, and he pulled back a bit. I don't see how there isn't, and I'm speculating here, I don't see how there isn't a lot of resignations if you have to work under a RFK, Food and Drug Administration. I don't see how they retain all of their senior leadership and experienced personnel. I'm sure there'll be some people who hunker down. It's like, we need to keep this department. We'll just wait 4 years or 2 years for some midterm stuff. Maybe, probably 4 years, and try to get back to work later. or do what we can now. But not be surprising to me, man. I would not want to work under RFK.
It. Like, I wasn't quite a fan of Michael Bloomberg, but one of the things he did was, I think it was during the Bloomberg administration, there were like polysaturated fats, I think it was, that were outlawed in New York City. I think that's become the norm around the country. Even you couldn't buy a 40-ounce soda.
That was kind of weird.
Not really, because it's the same principle, right? I mean, the fact is that like, and the pushback from conservatives in this was so ridiculous because, like, look, I can't go buy a pony version of like a beer. Like, I don't want a 12-ounce beer.
It's not illegal.
I want to, but I can't, it's not available to me. I mean, the size distribution, what difference does it make? Like, at the end of the day.
Right, well, that's true because people just bought 2 sodas.
It is, yeah. I mean, if you buy 2 sodas, at least you're trying to basically, you're not. You're not outlawing sodas or whatnot, but you're trying to encourage less cost essentially for society, right? Because more people get diabetes, that ends up costing society more. I mean, so there's a lot of value to regulation. Look, we saw this in the context of light bulbs. The light technology we have in here, right? All these LEDs. It's a lot cooler in here than it would be if we had the old-timey lights.
Oh, they burn out too.
The LEDs don't. They're cheaper. It took a couple of years before you got the technology was better. But maybe you remember this, but the outrage by conservatives over the light bulbs, and we hear Trump talk about this too with the toilets and whatnot. Incidentally, I'm very sorry. You have a very fancy toilet. And you have a very fancy toilet.
You apologized.
Well, it wouldn't flush.
You got to, because it's a fancy toilet. It's trying to save water. We try, man. So
no, I appreciate that.
You end up having to press it several times, and then
it didn't work for me.
Should we just get the regular one? The regular?
I don't know what you should do, but maybe I would call the authorities because
Well, I mean, but that's kind of an issue, right? We have this like high-end eco toilet. It will.
Well, it's a bidet, and it's fantastic. I really enjoyed that part of it. It's just,
but it won't.
Do people look? Maybe I'm a dirty, filthy American, and I just can't. I don't want that after evacuating. I don't just have a jet stream. Maybe this is a don't knock it till you try it situation, but conceptually, I don't like the idea. I'm a conservative toilet paper man. Conservative.
Flush.
It didn't flush.
Yeah, people keep asking, like, I don't understand. I'm like, you got to press it like 3 times because it has like a sensor.
I pressed it at like 5.
So I mean, this kind of feels like an example. So we agree. We want to reduce excess waste. We want to reduce overuse, waste in general. Like, we don't want to produce waste. We want to not waste things like fresh water. But now we have a toilet that requires 5 flushes because we tried doing the right thing.
Well, I mean, look, you just bought the wrong toilet. I mean,
One downstairs and have the
I have low flow. You can find low flow, manual toilets. I mean, that's a high end toilet. Somebody screwed up. But I mean, the bottom line is all of these. There are definitely regulations. Nobody's forcing you to buy that toilet, but there are definitely regulations that we find over time are not as effective as we thought. But the bottom line is all of this deregulation that we're seeing is a function of largely certainly of conservatives, but largely a function of the Republican Party. And now we see, for me, Kamala Harris would not be the first person that I would vote for, but in terms of the Supreme Court, that alone is enough for me.
How do we balance?
And federal courts, I would say too, broadly. I mean,
how do we balance this? Right, so there's a push and pull between private and public. There are, I've never been a laissez-faire libertarian guy. I've never heard a good argument from a libertarian about how you protect water. I've often brought up the Clean Water Restoration Act. Are you familiar?
A little bit.
I'm not trying to put you on the spot. It's just I think it was the 70s. I'm not sure if it was the Cuyahoga River.
It was the Cuyahoga River in Ohio that was on fire, and that's where we got the EPA from.
Right. And people were like, why is this? And what ends up happening is all of these corporations say, don't look at me. I only did a little bit. And it's like, well, yeah, but literally everybody doing a little bit is an avalanche.
Yes, of course.
And I've never heard a good answer for how you deal with something like that. Just claiming someone owns the river changes nothing.
No, of course it doesn't. I mean, I've had many, many debates. People can look on my channel for my debates with libertarians, and at one point it all just turns into ridiculous mush with libertarians. And look, there's a...
well, I mean, I like calls for government transparency. I like the idea of cutting government waste. You know, some level of fiscal responsibility is important in statecraft. I like the dedication to freedom of expression and certain rights. But at a certain point, it just feels like a hobbling the ability for a state to function on a basic level. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that it seems like they don't want a state at all. But I don't think that's functional in the modern world with modern technologies, the modern economy, and, well, our modern problems.
The idea that...
Like imagine a completely unregulated environmental policy where anybody could do anything as long as they got the money to do it. And people, well, you know, they would have the incentive to keep the planet green. What if you're not living along? You're not living that long. What if these are problems that have, like, you know, delayed effects? So you get the benefit now, the money now, and the effects, the damage to the community is felt 30, 40, 50 years later. Like, it's, I don't know. I just would like to have a planet that's livable.
You are either pro-regulation or anti-regulation. To be anti-regulation is, in my estimation, absurd. But that doesn't mean that you don't look at each regulation and make an assessment as to whether it's functioning or not. There's a lot of local regulations that I think are unhelpful at times. I'm sure on a federal level there are some regulations that are unhelpful. But the bottom line is, fundamentally, do you allow the government to have this ability to regulate? The idea that we have that it inhibits the free market in some way. I think the idea of a free market is absurd, doesn't exist. But beyond that, we're always regulating the market. It's just a question for whose benefit are we regulating it? That's the bottom line.
I think free markets can only exist temporarily until someone amasses power and then displaces the market and becomes the power structure.
There is no, like, what is a free market?
It would be like 10 people who live 10 miles from each other, they trade periodically. But once you get to a point where anyone controls one resource, you start to get power displacement, and then you'll end up with power centralizing.
Yes, well, the first thing that you're talking about, you know, hasn't existed in you know,
forever.
Yeah, forever. I mean, really.
But it's like I talk about this with left libertarianism because a lot of people on the right say it doesn't exist. And I'm like, it absolutely does. It's a hippies living on a farm. You know what I mean? That's left libertarianism. They're just hippies on a farm. There's no need for great power structures or police because 10 people living on a farm get along just fine.
Yeah,
but scaling things up is where...
but you know, and maybe they're completely self-sufficient, but you know, they got there in some fashion, and it wasn't they you know, they drove on roads that were built
right
by a society. You know, so
it is funny because I always hear libertarians say that it's a meme who's going to build the roads, and I never actually get a response.
True.
Like private companies.
You can find
oh
private
my
companies that are going to build
gosh,
roads,
true.
but they're
they do.
Yes, but they're not going to build it.
They're not going to build it to the fucking boonies in West Virginia, or like they're going to, and in those communities that can't afford to get the bigger, like they're just going to get garbage roads. We want to have a decent whatever. I don't believe that these companies of their good faith or their good fortune are just going to build roads out into the boonies.
Everywhere, like, you know, out here, you know.
I mean, had to build this road.
Well, you built the road, not the paved one.
The no, the one that goes onto the property we had to build.
Well, yes, of course,
property.
but the paved one gives you the opportunity to, you know, that's the way you get to the airport.
Yeah. So I guess the point about regulation is I certainly agree. It's like Republicans across the board are almost always talking about deregulation. But
yeah, it's absurd.
But I don't see Democrats talking about cleaning regulation either. right? There's a give and take. But let me give you a better example.
What does cleaning regulation mean?
Getting rid of the bad ones.
Oh my God. I mean, I would
like
say so
reforming.
to an excessive standpoint. I mean, this is, and I'm not speaking positively of this, but that guy Cass Sunstein underneath under the Obama administration, it was absurd. The idea, look, I don't think you ever have to worry about the Democrats putting too much regulation on things because to a certain extent, there's still elements within that party, and hopefully it's getting drummed out.
Well, guns is a good issue on overregulation.
Neoliberalism. Guns are
overregulated in ways that don't quite make sense, right? So that's an example of, for instance, semantic definitions of high capacity and standard capacity, what those even mean. But more importantly, the specific example would be in Maryland, they've banned the M1A, but the SCAR 20S is legal, despite the fact, and there's no legal, there's no reason for it other than Democrats just decided we will start regulating these things because it sounds good on paper.
Well, I think that probably the reason is that we have a court that decided in 2008 after almost
By the way, I disagree with the ban on the M1A.
200 years in this country of
I'm a Marylander, but I don't understand I don't want to get into it. If you ban one gun, but another gun serves the exact same purpose, I don't see what it achieves. I think gun regulation should probably still be around preventing the quote-unquote bad guy from getting handguns, which is where the vast majority of gun crime and deaths are coming from. I mean, like, the AR-15s, they get the most attention because of the high-profile shootings, but the vast majority of gun deaths are coming from handguns.
not perceiving an individual right to carry a gun, but only in the context of being a well-regulated militia.
Dylan, how do you not have a Maryland emote? That's a good point. We need to change that, and we will.
Militia, that because the court has lurched so far to the right over the past 2 decades, particularly most recently, that I think the idea is that you chip away at this from a legal perspective to try and build a legal precedent by doing, whatever. I mean, I'm not familiar with that specific regulation, but I would imagine that's the idea. We're going to get as much regulation as we can in this. I don't know, what's the damage done by that? Maybe from the perspective.
Made people felons who have an archaic, it's unfair to call it archaic, I guess, but like the M1 Garand is like a Vietnam weapon. And the M1A is a more modern version, but it's like a wood stock, and it's got it's a 308. The SCAR 20S is a modern AR-15 style variant, which is substantially more efficient.
Well, I am definitely in favor of outlawing, all of them, if that makes it easier.
Every single one.
Well, I listen. I think that people. I have no problem with people using weapons that are specifically for hunting.
Look, I don't know if I'm radical on this. I believe people should be able to own AK-47s. I believe people should be able to own AK-74s. This is a gun I'm more familiar with, obviously. I believe people should be able to own AR-15s. I believe people should be able to own, generally speaking, I don't know if Browning machine guns should be available widely at Walmart. I think that the more deadly and more powerful the weapon, having more barriers, checks, and making sure that the person who's getting this can, number one, know how to use it safely. Number two, can contain it within their home, somewhere they're not just going to be leaving it out, or they don't have a criminal history, violent history. These are certain things that I think should be checked, but I don't believe there should be a barrier where the government says, on principle, you cannot own this. We can own this, but you cannot own this. I don't like that.
Oh, that's
I'm sure I can find a limit for myself. I don't think maybe mortars, probably tanks.
I'm okay with that, but
see how I segued into guns now?
Well, I'm happy to.
And again, people can, if your problem is the gun deaths and you want to target gun deaths, handguns, again, they're the thing that is killing the vast majority of people. Handguns.
I mean, it's absurd, I think.
There's a bit of a force segue.
But, the Supreme Court has lurched to the right, and
Completely
we have
agree.
2 Supreme Court justices on the right who I think want.
There's just too many guns floating around. Well, then there's a question of like gun limits or like limits on gun sales or whatever, which I don't like that idea, but I don't banning that specific gun or this specific gun. I don't see how much it really achieves.
Want to retire in Alito and in Clarence Thomas, and I would love Donald Trump not to have the opportunity to appoint their successors.
I don't want to go too. I want to stay on the guns for a bit, but the signs pointing to a Trump victory. It doesn't mean he's going to win. I don't know if he's going to win.
Didn't you tell me we were driving up and somebody asked me if I'd been on your show before, and I said, yeah, I don't know what show it was because you got so many, but
it was actually this channel.
Okay,
that was like 7 years ago.
And nobody can find that interview, but I'm quite convinced that you also predicted a Trump victory then, and that must have been like it was pre-COVID.
Well, this was like 2017, 2018.
Okay.
So I don't know. I mean, maybe not, but I'm pretty sure it was.
I mean, I am unclear as to who's going to win this election. I see positive signs for Harris, but I can't tell if that's me being aspirational or not. So,
well, I would certainly say I learned my lesson with 2020, right? So I'm looking at, for instance, Moody's Analytics. And they always release this economic report where they're like, here's our projections, and they tout how it's historically accurate. And then what I think I saw was there was an increase in support for Trump. And what I thought I was calling out accurately was an increase in opposition to Trump, but the opposition certainly was greater. But I think the biggest function of 2020 was Republicans just don't know how to win elections. That's why I think the last Republican to win a popular vote was it Reagan? I think.
No, well, Bush in his second election.
Look, honestly speaking, I think if they had a better chief executive or somebody that wasn't so scandal prone, like if they had a Mitt Romney, I think they might have been able to perform better. I don't know. Then again, he would have played to a different base, so it's impossible to really do that calculation. But I mean, Trump was extremely scandal prone. He was not handling C-19 particularly well. He was actively spreading misinformation about it, like the heat was going to get rid of it, so it's not going to be a problem. He was downplaying it before it hit the country, then it hit the country. So if you remember that downplaying, you probably were not too happy about that. It did not hit the buzzer well in the 2020 election.
But he did that by basically coming out and bashing gay people and driving out the...
Probably didn't help that he attacked mail-in ballots so much, too.
Coming out and bashing gay people and driving out the... well, no, I think that was actually despite the fact... I mean, in the wake of 9/11, there was a lot of intimidation by the Republicans, and they attacked a lot of Democrats for being, Max Cleland, who lost both his arms and his legs or an arm and two of his legs, I think it was. He was running for re-election in Georgia, and they called him Osama bin Laden.
Wow.
But. Yeah, I mean, who knows? Hillary Clinton had a 95% chance of winning, and the 5% came in. So I don't. But let's get back to. I'm going to ask you about the Supreme Court, because it sounds like you have a problem with how their right would shift. Is that right?
The first challenge is like right and left mean different things in different areas of governance and culture and things like this. So it's when we talk about right.
Well, I'm talking about in terms of the Supreme Court, in the context of what...
In the context of the United States, Tim.
Supreme Court does. I mean, they don't dictate culture so much as they dictate law.
No, what I mean is, like you say, rightward shift, and defining what right and left are in different contexts, I think, matters, because if we say...
well, in the context of the Supreme Court, rightward shift would be one which...
traditionalist, I would say, versus progressive. That's what I'm trying to draw the distinction on, because like right economic they're certainly not right economic to a certain degree.
The Supreme Court is not right wing in terms of economics.
So right economics to imply more like laissez-faire capitalism versus.
Oh my God, they're completely attacking the government's ability to regulate. They're completely attacking the government and disempowering the government. Is basically saying, like, I mean, government is always.
That's not laissez-faire. right?
It is almost definitionally laissez-faire. Yeah.
Well, no, like allowing large corporations to have revolving door policies and protections for large corporations is not
revolving door policies. What is that? What do you mean?
like when like the CEO of Halliburton gets a job in government or something like this, right?
Well,
when there's an exchange between the government.
Laissez-faire is where you basically is. I mean,
Wait, what? I'm sorry. Did I miss that? I was looking at something on Twitter. What was?
That's not laissez-faire, right? But
the government and disempowering the government is basically saying, like, I mean, government is always.
That's not laissez-faire, right?
It is almost definitionally laissez-faire. Yeah.
Well, no, like allowing large corporations to have revolving door policies and protections for large corporations is not
revolving door policy.
I mean, I don't know if it would be. I think when people talk laissez-faire, it's usually more economic, but I mean, like, it's technically like, I guess you could try to describe that as laissez-faire. That's not the first word I would jump to. Hands off, I guess.
Policies? What is that? What do you mean?
like when like the CEO of Halliburton gets a job in government.
Dylan, not even watching. I'm sorry. Okay, I'm waiting for Trump to announce that RFK is gonna, cure cancer or something. I'm looking.
Right.
Well,
when there's an exchange between the government.
Laissez-faire is where you basically is. I mean,
yeah, buyer
I think
beware.
it's
You know how embarrassing that's gonna be 30 years from now, and we have my kids being like, "So this RFK guy, he was like, he was in charge of what?" Well, I mean, I don't know. Yeah. He brought the lead paint back into the schools. It was a great time. Like, oh, God, man.
smokes.
It's going to be so hard to justify my country's actions in 30 years.
No, that's caveat emptor.
I know. That's why I'm insulting it.
Laissez-faire is where essentially, and I think it's a little bit of a smokescreen, but laissez-faire specifically means the government completely backs off and does not intervene in
Right.
what's going on.
And what I'm saying is I think many of these powerful elites that we would describe as right are in favor of protections for their buddies and their billionaires.
Well, the
Tax breaks
reality of neoliberalism as it coming out of Mont Pelerin and the society, it was ultimately about a protection racket for a specific industry or a specific players within an industry.
But fair point. More right word than like relative to where we are. Yes, completely agree.
No, it's just it's almost definitionally right.
Right word shift. Yeah, I think I was pulling hairs.
Well,
but anyway, so I agree to a certain extent. I'm fairly modern on a lot of issues. I think there's got to be some push and pull. I think I'd like to see a Democratic Party that provides sound regulation in key areas that matter, like we're talking about lead and water and things like this. And then I'd like to see actually any party, I don't care who does it. Like it's a sound reason to be like, hey, don't dump lead and garbage in our water. But at the same time, it's also to say, hey, we should reassess what we blocked and why we blocked it. Then maybe there's some regulations.
What specifically are you talking about?
Like certain things to be deregulated.
Like what?
So the M1A, for instance, right? So I brought it to guns. My point is just in general.
What's the what?
It's a specific example of where Democrats have regulated firearms in a way that makes literally no sense.
Okay, it makes no
Doesn't do
sense.
anything.
What's the downside here?
Making people felons for owning something while
How
allowing
many of those people have been made felons by owning a
10,000? I don't know more.
10,000 felons? There are 10,000 felons in when was this in Maryland?
You mean convicted?
No, you said felon. I'm just asking.
Right. So I'll give you an example. The pistol brace ruling, right? So when the courts ruled that pistol braces made a pistol a short-barreled rifle, I actually had to dismantle a bunch of my weapons and separate. And there was no law passed. There was no act of Congress. This was ATF making an arbitrary decision that I was now committing felonies for simply having owned a legal product that I.
It doesn't technically make you a felon because they don't know you have the gun. It's if they found out you have a gun, then you're the felon.
Bought that was legal at the time. And Congress never.
Same thing, but there's a distinction.
Passed this law. So now I risk prison over a nonsensical
Wait a second.
regulation.
You were talking about Democrats.
What I'm trying to say is, if the government doesn't find it, then you don't have the gun. That's interesting, isn't it?
That's and
Overregulating things.
overregulating. But you just said that this was not a law that was passed. It was an assessment made by the courts.
No, it wasn't by the courts. It was the ATF, arbitrarily.
And have the,
This is the Chevron ruling, that the agencies have a right to self-regulate and make their determinations. So the ATF, this is partly why people on the right were celebrating this, because the ATF was arbitrarily deciding that it was now a crime without any act of Congress. So we had to actually, I had to
okay,
go
so
dismantle.
aside from these instances with you don't like some of these gun regulations, what other regulations do you have a problem with?
I don't know. I mean, there are certain things that I want to be regulated more than I think about in terms of
Like what?
deregulation. The lead in the water pipes is the easiest example.
Lead is actually,
And why isn't it being enforced is the question, I suppose. But
well,
also,
it is being enforced. I mean, the problem at what
about
happened
uranium too.
You know, it's crazy. All across Maryland, all these guns simultaneously got lost in just a series of tragic boating accidents, just one after the other. Just got so many reports. So sad.
What happened in Michigan was that you had a Republican governor who wanted to basically disempower a city that was, frankly, largely African American city, and
I think gambling should be regulated. I am no fan of the deregulation. I think what we're
but I'm specifically, I get that you have some issue with some like very marginal
phthalates
gun
should be
stuff.
regulated.
But what should not be regulated? Like you said that you have a problem with what Democrats are doing in terms of regulation. I'm curious as to.
I think that's an overestimation. I think that I would like to see regulations reassessed and then either.
But which ones? What are you talking about?
I'm saying we should have a review of regulations.
Just general the existence of regulations, all the regulations, just an audit of regulation as a concept. I'm sure there might be one or two, there could be regulations somewhere, probably on housing policy, honestly, as in housing construction and such, that, could be strike down. It's probably different from state to state, county to county. This is so vague and open-ended that there's nothing to take from this. It's just a vague call for deregulation. But then you call for regulation in the gambling industry. So, like, somebody's going to hear you, a vague call to deregulation, and they're just going to fill in their head whatever they want to deregulate. But it could be something that he wants to regulate. I have no idea. It's too vague.
In general.
So you think we should review every single regulation that exists?
I think they should have sunset clauses.
Why?
Well, because nothing's infinite, nothing's absolute. We might say, for instance, okay, I'll give you an example of regulation.
Lead's always going to be bad for people.
Yes.
So that one we wouldn't sunset, right?
Agreed.
Okay.
Yeah. But we're talking about if we apply a regulation to a specific body or something, a body of water, perhaps the body of water may change. So, I'll give you an example. Like we have
toxins in the water are always going to be toxic.
Which is why like I said, I'm in favor of more regulation, and that the deregulation thing is just a safeguard on we shouldn't be making sure that we're reassessing periodically.
Why would you?
He's saying nothing. This is say. See, in that thing, you're right. More regulation, but also I think generally speaking, we need more deregulation. Okay, so there's some areas that you want regulation, some areas you want deregulation. So you've said nothing. You've said nothing.
Sunset.
I assume that's everybody. Where you run into some government bureaucracy, this should be easier. This needs to be deregulated in this way, XYZ. Or you find something and you're like, oh my God, it's crazy. Nobody's done anything about this. That's everyone. Every 99.9% of people, unless you're talking about like ANCAPs or I don't know, like Stalinists, agree with you. You've said nothing.
Like those regulations on what is poisonous in water, for instance.
I wouldn't.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you just said that.
That's why I said I think it's an overestimation of. I think you may overestimate what I'm trying to say.
No.
Is that typically I think like phthalates, for instance, should be regulated. I don't believe there's a quote unquote free market solution to keeping endocrine disruptors in our food. That makes no sense.
No, I agree with that. I don't think that's controversial, but
there are regulations on things like your vehicles, your engine standards, guns, for instance, and I'm not
Hey, look what we just found. Look at this. Look at this. Prosecutors asked that far-right French lawmaker Marie Le Pen be found guilty of embezzlement and sentenced to 5 years in prison. A judgment that threatens to... Is this the conviction, or is this what prosecutors are asking for? No, it's prosecutors' request ban on Marine Le Pen running for public office. Wow. The three-time presidential candidate is accused of having embezzled EU funds. Charges she denies. Bad day for the national rally. We'll see if she gets convicted.
Saying I know specifically each and every regulation that should be deregulated, I think it is prudent for a society to say, hey, there's no market solution to stop people putting poison in our food. Our food has become just trash. But there is still a circumstance where we do understand that not every government application is going to be permanent or will work permanently. And I can put it a different way. There may come a point where the regulation isn't strong enough. And if we don't reassess what the law is...
Oh, I have no problem with strengthening regulations. I just, when you say deregulate or we should have regulations sunset or anything like that, I mean...
It just depends on what
understand that, like, what we're talking about here is there is a battle between people who would profit privately and socialize the costs. In other words, put it on all of us. So... you want to sell, well, let's just go back to Flint. You want to sell you want privatize this water supply. You want to give contracts to, because this is what the Republican governor there wanted to do. And the costs associated in this instance, like, they wanted to save money by not necessarily treating the water or, by delivering it in a way that will save them money. But the costs are socialized insofar as you've poisoned thousands of these children.
I went to Flint and I actually ran tests on the water, and it's crazy the macroeconomic issues at hand in Michigan. And what ends up with, like, a Republican politician is that for a lot of the people that live in the area, they're not directly impacted by what's happening to these kids, right? For people who live outside the area, they're going to see the news and they're going to say, like, how could this be possible? And so what ends up happening is actually it was a dude from Occupy who was working up in Detroit who was talking about the water crisis. And the problem started with population collapse. When, so he explained to me like this: you have a fixed water system in the Detroit and the surrounding cities. Let's say, hypothetical numbers, 100 people live in an area. It's $10 per person per month to run that fixed water system. So I said 10, let's say 10 people, and it's $100 a month. Let's make it simple. If 5 of those people leave, the fixed water costs remain the same.
We went from $10 to $100 so quickly. My God, Trump's America, everyone.
Make it simple. If 5 of those people leave, the fixed water costs remain the same, and now it's $20 per person.
Oh yeah, no, I get that.
So what ended up happening?
Who's paying for that?
The city, the people who live there are paying the taxes to maintain it. They're paying their water bills.
But
what ends up happening
because we have a private enterprise that is getting in between the deliverance of that water and the people, that their profit margins go down. I mean, if you go and you look at activists there will also tell you this was like a big privatization scheme. I mean, this is the biggest problem that we're dealing with, in my estimation, around this country is the movements to privatize, the idea that corporations can do something better than the government. Look, all major enterprises have waste. Yep. All major enterprises are in some fashion are going to be subjected to abuse and fraud, whether it's a private corporation.
Do you think that all those big stores, grocery stores, taking all the food that's not even expired, but might expire in like a week, and just like dumping it in their trash cans and pouring out because nobody bought it, but then it's not necessarily that profitable to handle? Is that the most effective way? Is that the way to cut waste? In certain services, it makes sense that you don't want a profit incentive. For example, like for the police to respond, if it's not profitable to respond to a murder or to respond to a crime, then you could get a situation where there's only these suburbs and communities where there's the wealthiest, where there's the most economic activity that are getting police responses, and the areas where are maybe like too far gone can almost get like abandoned, especially if the people there don't have the money to pay for police services. You could also make an argument here, and I guess this is a little bold in America, not really, Bernie did it a while ago. You could also make the same argument about healthcare, where if it's not profitable to cover a poor man's, healthcare coverage, or to cover that poor man's, healthcare services, then it's going to keep him from going to the hospital to get certain problems checked out. And the problem gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Then he goes, still can't pay it. And now the problem's bigger than it would have been if he would have went and got it looked at earlier, and probably more expensive to deal with.
Or a government entity.
Yeah.
But why do we have, for instance, why do we have health insurance companies? We don't need them.
We're on the same wavelength right now.
Don't need them. We know we have already run a massive experiment for now 60 years on a single payer health insurance program, and it's called Medicare. And it's wildly successful. To the extent that it's not, it's only because people have been trying to chip away and privatize different parts of it. But we're doing that already with a quarter of our country. There's no reason why we shouldn't have single-payer health insurance for everybody. We don't need insurance companies. People talk about bureaucrats getting in between your doctor and your health. Anybody out there who has dealt with it, and I'm old, I'm much older than you are, and everybody here. Dealing with your health insurance, when you're younger, you don't use it as much.
Right.
Dealing with your health insurance, talk about bureaucrats getting involved in this. It's a huge pain in the ass.
Yep.
And Medicare is a much easier program.
You know what's really crazy is when I left Vice and I went to join Fusion, there was a week.
The profits are made when they don't give you the services that you've been paying month by month for. That, in and of itself, is bad incentives.
Period where I was not employed, and I got a kidney stone. And holy crap, I had to go to the hospital. And thankfully, never had one since. The
existence of copays after paying health insurance is baffling. And it's baffling to foreigners when you talk to them about it.
Charging me, I think, what was it? It was like, I think it was like, $16,000 to $18,000 for a 3-day stay. And I was just like, what? Yep. I laid in a bed, dude. But here's the best part. I said, hey, I just switched employment, so I don't have insurance. And they went, oh, no worries. And then they sent me a bill for like $39.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wait, hold on. Where did that money go? Why were you trying to charge me that money? How does that make sense at all? It literally doesn't.
The problem is that health insurance, there is no incentive for insurance companies to keep costs low because they basically get a percentage of what the expenses are.
Not to mention, when we talk about healthcare, this isn't like a TV in a store where you can just, I'll just use the TV at home, or I'll buy a cheaper version. If you have cancer and it's a life or death situation, you're a captive market. And so there's not really a choice there. You have to get that whether you like it or not. And I mean, you could say that to some extent with like food, housing, but if you're facing life or death scenarios and they say you got to pay this copay, you have to pay the copay. You got to deal with this horrible bureaucracy. You got to deal with the horrible bureaucracy. If they want to charge you an arm and a leg, you're going to pay the arm and a leg because, I mean, you're not going to be using your money for anything if you're dead.
The way that you contain costs is by having a single payer that can look at the data across the country and assess, is this a valid treatment or is that a valid treatment? There's been, all sorts of studies on this. And we could save this country a tremendous amount of money long term, but not just the country. I'm saying as individuals, plus on top of which all the pain in the ass that's associated with your health insurance. And, this is one of the things. This brings up, again, we have an election in 3 days. I think Donald Trump is garbage, frankly. But the real concern I have about Donald Trump becoming president is that it's going to empower the Republican Party. Mike Johnson the other day said he's going to cut the ACA. And now, aside from the fact that
while Trump is also claiming parts of the ACA,
Republicans tried to repeal the ACA like 50 times or whatever. I don't care about that.
They're lying, by the way.
Well, They're lying because they have no ideas about this, and to the extent that they're going to change anything, I mean, Trump did, attempt to do on the margins to disable the ACA. There are three aspects of the ACA, and it was originally called the Patient Protection Affordable Care Act, PPACA. They dropped the PP thing, which I think was a real problem because that's actually what this law did better than anything else. It expanded Medicaid, so you had millions of people, low-income people, who had the ability. Not every doctor takes Medicaid, but to the extent that they could get a provider, millions of people who had health insurance for the first time. The other thing it did is it created these marketplaces. This was sort of a right-wing subsidized industry deal. I think it's a useless, it didn't lower the cost. It bent the cost curve, but it basically just slowed the rate of increase on insurance. I think we can do a lot better with a single payer thing. But the third thing it did, which is also the most important for us right here in this room, is the patient protection part. Prior to this, you could be denied care because you had some type of pre-existing condition, pregnancy,
diabetes.
Diabetes. Yeah. I mean, really, just a list of things. You could be denied care, or you could be charged an exorbitant amount. The other thing that could happen is that, like you say, all of a sudden you have kidney stones. 80% of the cost of health insurance in this country is borne by 20% of the people. And you don't know if you're going to be 1 out of 5, but if you are, it's going to end up costing you $18,000, or you're hit by a bus. The insurance companies used to say you have an annual limit. So, you got hit by a bus, you're in the hospital for 2 or 3 months. I'm sorry, buddy, but you just ran out of your health insurance. Or annually, lifetime. So you get cancer, your treatment costs this amount. Not only have you exhausted it for the year, you've done it. But when Mike Johnson says he's going to cut the ACA, what they're talking about, and when he said we're going to, not everybody needs this insurance. Young people maybe feel like they don't need this health insurance. When they do that, the only way for them to do that is to raise prices on everybody else. Yep. And so the whole point of insurance is that I may not need it in my 20s in the way that I would need it in my 50s. But I'm going to be 50. And so it smooths it out.
I think...
And that's the whole point. And that's why I really am, again, with my hesitation about Harris, because of, particularly in terms of Gaza, which we can talk about in a moment if you want. But there's the putting the Republicans in power, they have gotten progressively worse on all of these issues over the past 20 years.
There are two things I think that play a role with the ACA especially. We had a Republican on IRL, and he just said, they came to me and told me not to vote in favor of it. They said specifically it's a wedge issue we want to campaign on, so let's keep it around. This is what I see with the bulk of politicians. They're just pretending to support things, and then they dangle. I mean, they said Obama said he wanted to codify Roe, and then he didn't. And it's been a talking point for a long time.
I mean, the thing that Obama expended all of his political capital on was the ACA, and I think they did want to codify Roe, but I don't think, frankly, I could tell you that in talking to people in that world, they never thought the Supreme Court would overturn it.
I definitely want to get into that, but I want to add one more thing too, is what the Republicans and Democrats have both privately been saying is, and this is funny because I think one of the arguments against these major healthcare, I shouldn't say healthcare, but like insurance companies, is the bloat and bureaucracy that is created in the system, which seems to solve nothing, but actually cost us money. And then you hear these politicians have actually said, a large portion of our economy is these health insurance systems. And so if we were to do away with it, you're going to lose all of these bureaucratic middle managers. And I'm like, they're concerned about getting reelected if there is a perceived economic downturn from loss of jobs.
No, I mean,
none of that is an argument for or against healthcare.
No, I don't think that's the case because look, you're going to need people to administer this stuff. I mean, a lot of people in the healthcare industry would still have jobs. It's just that they would be either the government would contract to them, as it's done, to a certain extent now, to do this work. It's just that we would not have shareholders who where 10% of what's going on or 20% of what's going on is a function of shareholders.
Let me ask you a question, though. So there was a story, I think it was out of Georgia, where some young kid had a genetic disorder and there was a treatment.
Also, I don't like the idea of employing people just to employ people. I do agree with the idea of trying to defend the healthcare version of the cabooseman is not something the government should be doing. But yeah, there's a obvious political reason why they don't want to make those cuts. So they don't want to be able to look at the jobs report and say, ooh, look at the job losses. Even though if those people then get jobs anywhere else, they'll probably be contributing to the economy much more than they were before in a position which they would be proven redundant.
But it's some kind of like rare genetic treatment that costs $1 million to produce. And the family had sued the state, saying that the state should pay for this because it's part of a plan that they had with government benefits and something like that. And the state argued, we can't pay $1 million every time we have to do this treatment. And so the challenge then becomes treatments for diseases go so far as technology can allow. I'm sure there's grant programs and ways we can develop technology, but what do we do if we do, say, like single-payer healthcare and there's 10 people who have a rare genetic disorder that's killing them, but one treatment available? How do we assess? Is there like a triage system? How do we distribute that?
Oh, how's it distributed now?
Rich people.
Well, okay. I mean, look. I mean, there's some. I'm not saying that sickness is going to go away with a single payer healthcare program, but the bottom line is that fundamentally more people will have better coverage and ultimately more money in their pockets, despite the fact that we'll have to tax more for it. But over the course of their lifetime, will have more money in their pockets and will not have the insecurity that comes with losing their job, wondering whether or not, like you say, in between jobs, they will not have the headaches of like, oh, my insurance company has dropped me this year, or I've got new programs, or I have new things. I mean, that's, you will find after your kid is born that half of your time is spent on like all of this like bureaucracy in the private healthcare industry.
What if instead of taxing more, we just reallocated existing taxes? Theoretically lowering it in some areas.
We what?
Reallocate existing taxes. Because people pay a lot already, right?
Do they though? I don't think so. I mean, if you look at taxation relative to like the 1950s, you know what what the top marginal tax rate was?
98%.
In 1950.
All they did was pull loopholes and other BS to avoid
No,
it.
actually, that's not true. No, it isn't. If you can actually. I can tell you right now. Some of your libertarians.
Let me explain something real quick. If the government came and told me they were taxing me at 100%, I wouldn't pay any of those taxes. It's never going to happen.
If the government is taxing you 100%, you will not work. You will not pay for those taxes, and you will not get it.
I will work. I will make money. And so the issue is...
You will commit crime.
No. It's Donald Trump brought this up in 2016 when he was like, we utilize the system as it exists to avoid paying through the mechanisms. For example...
in the 1950s and 60s.
I get it.
No.
There's $1 million deduction for equipment, for instance. So value earned can be retained outside of the U.S. dollar without paying taxes on it.
Great.
This is what a lot of people do. So they can tax as high as they want.
Look, I mean, in Europe, the people I talk to, taxes seem quite higher. I'm in Ukraine right now. Country's at war, taxes pretty high. Go to Germany, taxes pretty high. Go to France, taxes can be pretty high. If you have the government take over a lot of the services that people are going to the private sector for, taxes are going to increase. But I think the way that you value whether or not it's a good thing for the government to take over is you look at the incentives in the industry and whether the incentives work towards helping the person. In the healthcare industry, I don't think that's the case. In the entertainment industry, for example, I think it could be the case. Like, they get more people in seats, that means more successful, therefore it's good. You know, it makes more sense there. But in healthcare, it doesn't make as much sense. And if you can bring down costs overall by cutting out bureaucracy, as well as concentrating on the main job of healthcare, which should be keeping people healthy instead of necessarily keeping the operation profitable, then you can have a patient-centered healthcare system that hopefully, if it goes well, would cost the average person less out of their pocket throughout, like you said, throughout their lifetime. Maybe... at start, when you're 20, 21, 22, 23, it probably would feel like it's costing you more, but you will, hopefully, if everything goes well, get old, and those costs will turn its ugly head, And then relative to what you would be paying later on, at that point, it would actually be quite less. And that's when you're going to be relying on Social Security payments and otherwise, which, you know, that fixed income, it's going to be hard for you to go out and, well, do a little extra work here to pay this bill. So, you know, keeping the cost down later on is important. I feel like I'm just like saying the basics right now, but I got to reiterate it.
Wealthy people will always get around it, and poor people can't.
In the 50s and 60s, the highest marginal tax rate, over $470,000 if you earned, which would be equivalent to about $3 million a day. Every dollar over that was taxed at a 90% rate. We had the greatest economic expansion this country has seen during that time period. Now, part of it obviously has to do with, like, you know, post-war or World War II. There's a lot of factors, but the tax rate did not inhibit any of that growth. The effective tax rate.
No, I agree.
The effective tax rate. The effective.
Inflate's the wrong word.
The effective tax rate, it was 50%. So that includes all of the deductions, all of the hijinks that's associated with that, the loopholes and whatnot. 50% for those high earning.
I'm gonna be honest, they're disagreeing on stuff. I mean, just disagreeing on like half the stuff. I thought this was gonna be a lot more hostile. I mean, I'm an hour, 10 minutes in. It's a 3-hour thing. We're not watching 3 hours. I just expected a lot more hostility. I expected to lean maybe a little bit more into drama. They're disagreeing on stuff, but I mean, it's stayed pretty cordial. But then again, Sam's not much of a screamer, is he? I don't see him scream often.
Well, let's
so
pause
you
real
don't.
quick,
I don't need to raise taxes on people who are making. Who,
we don't need to argue this because I don't think that's the point. There's any point of contention. I'm saying that if you go to people and say we want to give you health care, but it's going to raise your taxes, they're going to recoil in horror. Whether it's good for them or bad for them.
I think Bernie Sanders was on the way of making that argument. But if you if you and I advocate for single payer health care, and we get other people to advocate for single payer health care, we can do this. Are we on board?
I
have your pledge right now to support a single payer health care system.
Depends on the structure of the single payer health care system. I'm for
in principle.
I would like to see a private option and a public option. I think it's fine if we have what I call universal basic health care, where
I don't think you need to outlaw private health care, but would you agree that we need to make sure that if you're licensed to practice medicine is a function of having, let's say, 90% of your clients accept 90% of your payments from Medicare?
I don't know if I'm smart enough to answer that question.
Then just trust me.
What I can say is it makes no sense that a kid gets the flu and dies in this day and age. It makes no sense that a kid will break his leg and then the hospital says, sorry, you don't have the right coverage for this. These are basic things that, first-year medical students could help treat, and we have ample Tamiflu and things like this. So those stories piss me off, especially insulin, for instance. People who are diabetic. There was one story where a guy...
Well, you know who capped insulin, don't you?
It was Biden, right?
Yeah.
There was a guy who had, I think he was diabetic, and he had to choose between rent or insulin.
Sure. Oh, I don't think it's just a guy.
Right, exactly.
There's a lot of people that...
To me,
I've lost friends from rationing, man. It's awful.
It's silly and
man who made the best jerk chicken in Maryland got killed by that. A good friend of mine.
Makes no sense. But my point was simply, as a way to segue to American foreign policy and our gross spending on wars that don't provide for the American people, if we start by saying, hey, look, we don't need to raise your taxes. We just don't need to build as many tanks. Instead of building tanks, we're going to build, factories for insulin and hospitals and hire medical workers.
I don't believe, frankly, we don't need taxes to spend money. We have shown that. Okay?
We don't. It's right.
We don't.
Taxes are basically just...
We don't. We're a sovereign...
controls.
This is somewhat unique to the United States because we have such control over our currency, and it is essentially the world's currency.
Not for long.
Well, people have been saying that for decades. We'll see about that. But
Saudis dropped the petrodollar.
I understand.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is that the reason why we would have...
We'll see. We'll see the competitors. Let's look at world reserve currency rates right now, actually. World reserve currency percentages. I butchered percentages. 59% for the US dollar. Then the next is the euro. That's actually down. It used to be like over 20% weakness in the euro. 19.8% in American allies. Then the Japanese yen, 5.5%, another American ally. British pound sterling, 4.9, another American ally. Then the Chinese, then the Canadians, another American ally. The Australian dollar, another American ally, and then the rest of the world's currencies.
Taxes in the way that I suggest is to essentially make it illegal to have this type of wealth disparity in our society. I'm okay with some wealth.
To be clear, that percentage 59 is down from where it was before. But the idea that, you know, the imminent collapse of the US dollar is here, I don't see it. There's just not a really worthwhile competitor. And while people talk about BRICS, BRICS has yet to agree on a competitor. The Russians want it to be the ruble. The Chinese tell people just to trade in their own local currency. And if you go to every other member of BRICS, you're going to get a different answer. So, you know, until they like, and the more they expand their organization, I heard they're adding Thailand, they're adding this, they're adding that. The more they expand their organization, the harder it's going to be for them to agree on a consistent plan. They probably should have agreed on one and then got more people in if they wanted to pick a competitor. Because now every countries are going to want it to be their currency. And if the countries like Russia and the countries that wanted to be their currency like Russia, the way they manipulate and control the currency means it will never be able to compete. The Chinese, because of the political controls they have, it will not be able to compete. I will say, if Donald Trump says goes through with some people's requests and his own flirtation with crippling the independence of the Federal Reserve, that is something that I think could affect our status as world reserve currency, which Trump himself has said would be like the United States losing a war.
Wealth disparity, that's fine. But the bottom line is we have such enormous wealth disparity. The Fed came out with a report a couple of weeks ago. The reason why the economic numbers look so good, and they do, our economic numbers look good relative to the way that we have measured the economy over years. But the reason why they look so good is because of the tremendous wealth disparity we have in this country, where very rich people are driving consumer spending. And so taxation for me is a mechanism in which to inhibit wealth disparity.
So there, 50-50, yes, I agree. And then there's other contextual components to it. When the tax rate goes up, for instance, like I mentioned, there's $1 million per year tax deduction for equipment for a company. Well, all that means is if there's a guy who runs a business and he makes $1 million profit, and you're telling him once the year rolls over, he's got to give 40% or whatever that number is to the government, he's going to go buy $1 million worth of motorcycles for the business. And then that, you know, there's depreciation, but then he just says, if it applies to the business. Now, what that does do is if people who make the motorcycles are getting jobs.
Yeah, exactly. I have no problem with taxation also causing wealthy people to stop hoarding money. They're hoarding money.
That's my point. It caused a lot of people think like, oh, if you tax these businesses, they're not going to hire. And I'm like, no, it's the other way around. If you tell a company that they're going to lose $1 million at the end of the year, they're going to spend it on something to retain the value of the money they earned. So rich people end up
they're going to reinvest it in their business.
Yes, or create new businesses. I do not see a reality where that makes sense, where someone's like, I'm going to...
You don't think it makes sense to create new businesses?
No, I'm saying there's no reality where a rich person says, I'm going to keep $1 million in the bank and then give half to the government. They're going to say, I'm going to buy $1 million worth of stuff so I can retain the value that I've earned. The tax doesn't matter. He's going to reinvest it in some way that allows him to retain the value without giving it to the government.
Well, the tax would matter in the sense that it got him to reinvest it, where otherwise maybe he would have put it into something else that wouldn't have been as, you know, beneficial to the economy or the business.
Which is
not necessarily saying that's the best way to do that. I'm just saying, like, that is, from the example he laid out, that was the inciting action, was the tax.
I don't mind taxation that gets rich people to reinvest in, capital expenditures. But we have millionaires and billionaires who are sitting on money and just dumping it into the stock market. So if you're suggesting to me that capital gains should be capital gains tax should be raised to where it is with wages, we are in agreement.
The challenge with the stock market is 401ks. It's all bundled together. So you've got wealthy investors who are just creating these massive portfolios where they're extracting value from systems that provide nothing. And then you have retirees. So this is where it's coupled, I guess. That's a challenge.
I mean, there's been an attempt by Wall Street to get more people in that boat, but we still have like 80% of the stocks are owned by like, I don't know, 10, 20% of the people. I mean, it's completely
parasites.
unbalanced. Yeah, I agree with that.
People who
join me in calling for a much higher marginal tax rate at the high end and capital gains and wage taxes being the same. And we could talk about Social Security and I know you want to get to foreign policy.
So I've been a fan of.
Oh God, I don't want to. No. Ugh, I don't want to. I don't deserve this. I don't deserve this. What have I done? What is this on? Oh, this dude hates Gates. I've seen him before. What was the other? I think I have another clip somewhere, actually, of him talking about Matt Gaetz. The incoming Attorney General, perhaps? It's crazy to say out loud. Yes, I do have another clip. Here it is. I had that on there ready. Of him. This guy has all the Gates stories because they came in together in 2017. Gates, of course, denies it. But listen to this.
Got to think about this guy. This is a guy that the media didn't give a time of day to after he was accused of sleeping with an underage girl. And there's a reason why no one in the conference came and defended him, because we had all seen the videos he was showing on the House floor that all of us had walked away of the girls that he had slept with. He'd brag about how he would crush ED medicine and chase it with an energy drink so he could go all night. This is obviously before you got married. And so when that accusation came out,
My
no one
God,
him,
what a
and then no one on
story.
the media would give him a time of the day. All of a sudden he found fame because he opposed the Speaker of the House back in November. And he's always
For those of you who don't know what ED medicine is, erectile dysfunction.
there, and he's not.
Popping Viagra and chasing it with energy drinks.
He was never going to leave until he got this last moment of fame by going after a motion to vacate.
It's important to.
What a story. What a story. And here's the news story.
And Florida should make a hard look at. I mean, there was many times.
Well, actually, no, this isn't new. This is still old, but I haven't seen this until now.
And Florida should make a hard look at. I mean, there was many times that he would go out on news programs in the evening, and he would tell me personally, hey, I got to go sell my constituent catheters, because all he was doing was selling himself, and evidently his constituent base is an older base, and that he thought that was funny. To me, that's not funny. You take your job and make it serious, do what's right by it, and serve. This isn't an opportunity for you just to have an opportunity to promote yourself, which that was what.
I mean, who's your nominee? I mean, Trump NFT, Trump sneakers, Trump everything, man.
Matt Gaetz' goals was. And so now that he wasn't relevant before Speaker McCarthy, the Speaker McCarthy opposing him has made him a credible candidate somehow and allowed him to get all the attention that he was seeking beforehand. And he's going to continue to do this, even if it's the next speaker, because he has to seek that attention. I mean, remember what I said, Emma, this is retail politics. This has nothing to do with policy or principle anymore.
Well, just jumping in really quickly, those accusations I know you brought up earlier, just those are allegations. They were never proven. And again, that Congressman Gaetz has denied those.
I will say that you're 100% right. He's denied those,
Right.
and it went away. But
Right.
the other part, what I'm saying about the individual, those aren't allegations. That's firsthand that he told me that we dealt with on the floor. The first time I ever met this guy, he walked up to me, and Kristi Noem at the time was at the podium. He was speaker, or he was elected at the time. He was a member-elect. So we was going through conference and orientation, and he walked up to me as Kristi Noem, now Governor Kristi Noem, and he said, man, she's a fine, and you can put the B word in place there. And I looked at him, I said, really? Because Kristi is a very close friend of mine.
What a character this guy is painting. My goodness.
So I think one of the challenges, what's the top tax rate? It's $250 above, $250,000 and more. I think they changed it a couple years ago or something. They might have increased it. But you had a long time ago, $250,000 was a lot of money. You know, if we go back 50 or whatever years, and they're like, okay, so after 250, you're taxed at a higher rate. I've been for a long time in favor of we've got to create more scales in the progressive tax rate. Like,
well, look, like I said, in 1950s and 60s, $470,000, 90% tax rate for every dollar made over that. That's the way that marginal taxes work. But that number would be $3 million today. So I would be okay with doing $3 million.
So on paper, I say this, right? And then, of course, people are going to say, oh, why is Tim now saying we should have a higher? The problem then is when you run to the other wall of foreign policy. What is the utilization of taxes for? The first thing you got to understand is the way the U.S. government uses money. People think that you get taxed and the government spends the money. It's not how it works. The government will issue debts or whatever, or agree to make payments, tax you, and then later cover those. Or there's fractional reserve monetary creation, where they literally just create the debt upon the money upon the issuance of debt. So taxation does correlate directly with government spending, but it's not one-to-one. The issue I take is, I don't know, all of the money we're spending on foreign policy for the purpose of propping up the petrodollar. And I understand the arguments.
So you're talking about the $260 billion we've given Israel over 30 years?
Absolutely. And Ukraine over the past 2 years.
What does Ukraine have to do with the petrol? Dog, every war's oil. Is that it? Is that like the entirety of Tim Pool's like foreign policy? This war's oil, that war's oil. Every war, anytime anyone's ever killed another man, it's been for deep black gold in the soil. Everything is oil. Everything is oil. Everything is oil. Everything is oil. Foreign policy, oil. Healthcare, oil. Economics, oil. Just oil. Oil it all.
For what? You know, the argument, it's the neolib, neocon, or whatever you want to call it, of maintaining support for the petrodollar, which allows us, like you were mentioning, with control of this currency, we can spend in ways other countries can't. As long as we maintain the petrodollar, we do not need to maintain exports at the same rate of spending like other countries do.
But Russia invaded. Wouldn't they be the ones like going to whatever?
Because world police, I guess. And so what ends up happening is with, for instance, what we're seeing with Ukraine is all correlating with the Qatar-Turkey pipeline trying to offset the Gazprom gas monopoly in Europe.
God, shut the fuck up. I'm sorry. He keeps doing this again and again and again. He did this pipeline-istan theory with Syria, and he said, actually, the real reason we're in Syria, you know, it doesn't have to do with trying to stop weapons flows from Iran to Hezbollah, which anybody who is anyone in foreign policy could clearly recognize from where our bases are positioned, where our allies are, or you could talk about, I don't know, just the brutality of the Assad regime probably made it easier for us not to like them and do Operation Tipper Sycamore. But his justification was the Assad regime was about to make this oil deal that would allow a pipeline that would counter our interests. And that's the real reason we're there. You want to know why I don't buy it? Number one, there's not a lot of... We don't know if there was really any progress on this supposed pipeline to begin with. Like they were going to... Okay, we're going to get ready to put it in the soil. So I don't know how we're going to start a civil war in Syria. By the way, it was his own people revolting against him. We didn't incite that. It was his own people. If we're going to start a war about a pipeline project that hasn't even started, there was also a lot of financial problems with actually trying to make the pipeline feasible in the first place. And here's the big kicker. Why wouldn't Assad say, hey, this is all about oil? They want to stop my magic pipeline deal. The pipeline deal he doesn't talk about. So Tim Pool has been able to find out the real reason that nobody else could see, that Assad didn't see, that no one saw but Tim. It doesn't make any sense to me. Why would Assad not say, hey, they're overthrowing me for oil, for this pipeline? Why wouldn't they say that? Why wouldn't the Russians say it? Why wouldn't the Russians say the real reason America's involved is because they're afraid of yada, yada, yada? No, you know what they say? Nazis. You know what they say? Nazi, this is an extension of World War II. Nazis, it's, we got to Russian liberate, da, da, da. They don't talk, because it's not the reason. I'm sure the resources under Ukraine's soil to some people for why they support Ukraine is a factor. But when you talk about all the people who support Ukraine, it's an extremely broad coalition of people who have different interests. There's some people who want to support Ukraine because they see Russia as a strategic enemy of the United States, and an ability to undercut a strategic enemy is an opportunity that needs to be taken. I know Cam Higbee, he's a Republican who has this belief. There's others that believe that if we don't stop the Russians in Ukraine, then they're going to move over to other countries, and the foundation that Putin used as a justification to invade Ukraine on could be used against other post-Soviet states. Some people, genuinely believe that if Ukraine ingrains within the European Union and, is able to stop the invasion, that they're going to continue their process of democratization, integrate with Europe, and it's going to be not only more prosperous for them, but then Europe is going to have access to the wheat, they're going to have access to those resources, and be more prosperous for everybody. There's other reasons too. These are just 3 quick ones. To be such a reductionist on this is not just not giving people the full picture, it's giving them negative knowledge so that these people will go out into the world thinking a war is really all about this when there's so many different factors at play that you're just like, even if I was to grant that it had some impact, this pipeline, whatever, let's say that it did, your face is in front of a tree, all you can see is bark, and you're missing the forest around you. You need to step back and look at the big picture.
Effectively, the simple answer is maintain petrodollar against adversaries of the petrodollar.
Do you think that, and I want to turn to your opinion on Israel, but do you think that the United States wanted Russia to invade Ukraine?
No, absolutely not.
What is that? Wait, what does it have to do with maintaining the petrodollar? In fact, here's a better argument. If you want to make this about the oil and gas industry, Russians invade Ukraine, Europeans sanction Russian gas, American LNG exports massively increase to Europe, to the point where Biden is restricting the construction of LNG terminals because we don't want to, he's afraid that the massive amount we're exporting is actually going to affect American prices. These companies are making bank. If anything, the argument would be, for the oil and gas industry, or specifically, liquefied natural gas, LNG, you would want the Russians to invade so we could dominate the market. That to me, and I don't think that's true, but if you were to start connecting dots and, this could be this and then this could be that, that makes more sense than we didn't want them to invade, but we're protecting Ukraine so we can, whatever.
So are you familiar with the Qatar-Turkey pipeline?
There's some, God, it's the same pipeline-istan nonsense he's been saying for years.
Not particularly.
And Sam's out. I don't know if Sam's out of his depth on this, but I mean, most people don't know BS stories, though,
I harp on it quite a bit. It is it's a limited component of the ongoing conflict from the Middle East into Europe. But in 2009, I think it was, the United States was trying to build a pipeline from Qatar through Syria, Turkey, into Europe, which would help offset the Gazprom gas monopoly. Gazprom controls about 20%. Syria said no.
Look, I'm not going to go through this. I already told you I already told you my opinion about this. It's all nonsense.
Syria said, quite literally, and this is a quote, or I'm paraphrasing their quote, our ally Russia would never allow us to allow this to go through our country. Lucky for the United States that a civil war just happened to occur and Bashar al-Assad
just happened. There was bloated bodies of children beaten and dumped on the side of the road that spurred protests. There was massive corruption, thuggery from the Assad regime that's been going on for decades. It's not like protests in Syria just came out of nowhere. What about the football protests in northeastern Syria and Kurdish communities when they tore down Hafez al-Assad statues? And so Assad responded by sending tanks and guns and killing a bunch of people, including women and I believe children, if I remember correctly. It's been a while since I researched this or read about this. It's not like opposition to Assad just manifested out of nowhere.
Was the enemy of the United States, who was gassing his own people. And
were you in support of Obama not wanting to get involved in that?
I don't know enough specifically, but what I would say is we should not have been involved in Syria.
Correct.
The United States' interest is, for a lot of the spending we do, is to prop up the petrodollar, militaristically or otherwise.
My position is this. I was like 12 when the Syrian civil war started, so sorry if I wasn't on the street making my position known. But if we're gonna intervene, you got to do it early, and you want to do it quickly and strongly, so you don't drip feeding the rebel. Because the policy with Timber Sycamore was drip feeding the rebels to make the Assad regime negotiate with them. But the Assad regime was never going to negotiate with the rebels. They were never going to negotiate with the opposition. And so they killed them. And they killed them. And they killed anyone who opposed them. They killed like 400,000 people. Masses and masses amounts of people. Amounts of people that ISIS can only dream of killing. And that's the legacy of the Syrian civil war. And now Syria's broken and we see no way to put it back together again. You either don't intervene at all, or if you're going to intervene, intervene. But Obama could not get the support in Congress.
And we were trying to compete with Russia on natural gas. This is why we wanted a foothold in Ukraine. After the Qatar-Turkey pipeline fails, what ends up happening is Russia, Iran, and Turkey started cutting a deal with it to run a pipeline from the same gas
what
field.
was also problematic about Trump getting out of the Iran nuke deal unilaterally in that respect, right? Because we have now...
If you're going to spend so much time to like weave these theories, why not just actually research the war?
Pushed Iran further away into that sphere of influence.
As it pertains to the gas trade-offs and the conflicts in Europe, I don't know. I wouldn't know enough. I can say that even during Obama, the Stuxnet was probably a really bad idea. Are you familiar with Stuxnet?
Yeah, that was Israel.
Israel and the United States teamed up to create a virus that blew up centrifuges in Iran, which act of war much. I'm surprised it didn't escalate in a dangerous way.
I mean, but fortunately, one of the best things that Obama did was to make that nuke deal. Let me ask you this, since you bring up Russia.
Yeah.
Do you feel like that you have to put some type of disclaimer because of the whole tenant thing, or no?
No. I never received money from Russia. We never were given any money to create anything. Tenant Media and
it was all laundered through Tenant Media. I mean, obviously you didn't get you weren't getting paid in rubles.
So I can try and I'll keep it real simple. You have sponsors on your show. Did you ever ask who their investors are? Did you?
The sponsors?
Yeah, like a company comes to you and says, we want to, have you shout us out or something. Do you like...
You would at least Google them. You would at least make sure it's like a real person. Like when they say, oh, this billionaire, Willy Wonka, he came up, he has this candy factory and, he just made a lot of money and he loves your show, Tim. And so he wants to give you $100,000 per episode just so he can repost your content, not even get the exclusive rights to it. Oh, of course. Here's a PDF. Don't Google them, though. It doesn't come up. Very underground.
Look into their financiers. Do you dig through their bank?
Google them. All you needed to do was Google them, Tim. All you needed to do was Google them. Can you not take a name, put in the search engine, and be like, nothing's coming up? It's kind of hard for me to believe this is real.
Accounts.
I mean, we get it all from media brokers, but they weren't advertising on your show. They were,
it was
they were paying you a license deal.
A license fee.
Yeah.
So I licensed to Nat Geo. I never asked them who their investors were.
Who, National Geographic?
Yeah. When I licensed through like all these other big distributors, someone comes to me, they say, we want a license. It goes to our lawyer comes back, says, here's the agreed upon fee. I said, thank you and have a nice day. And then we move on.
So was it just Ruben who asked who Gerard Depardieu or whatever that guy's name was?
I don't know what Dave did or anybody else did.
Did you ask about who that guy was?
Absolutely. And what's crazy is...
Well, wait a second. Why did you ask about who that guy was?
Wanted to know. Isn't that due diligence?
Yeah, but you just said you don't ask who the investors are.
No, I said, do you? Like, do you dig into all of these things?
I've never actually been approached with anything even remotely like that.
So when I got reached out to by Discovery and Nat Geo, I said, I'm familiar with what this is. It's
yeah, no. If I mean, I licensed my show to Peacock, and
right, you know what they are.
Well, yeah, if, I don't know, Dollar Shave Club. Hey, I've been sponsored by Raid Shadow Legends and other, like, gaming companies before. Like, I don't really take sponsorships anymore. I prefer to do this completely off of donations if I can. DylanBurns.tv, by the way. But, I mean, like, Dollar Shave Club is one thing. This is, like, a made-up financier that said they were going to fund the company because he just loves the conservative value, but he's not real. He's not real. He's not a real person. You could have just Googled him. Just looked him up.
Yeah, I mean, National Geographic is a well-known thing. But if somebody comes in and says, like, we're going to give you that.
My problem with Tim is he's never taken any responsibility for this. If he just would have said, I was an idiot, I should have Googled, I should have, I'm a fool. He's never taken any responsibility. And so if he doesn't take any responsibility, I can't cut him any slack. I'm certainly not cutting him slack when he's getting that ching out of it, you know?
Kind of money for your programming, I'd be like,
how much money do you make on Majority Report?
Fuck is that?
How much money do you make on Majority Report?
How much do I make from on our revenue from the whole show?
All of it, 100%.
I mean, it's six
figures a
month? Revenue, yeah,
per month.
Yeah.
So why were you
figures? Yeah.
So you're over 100K per month on Majority Report.
I think. Well, I mean, some months. I mean, certainly the past couple of months have been really good. Some months are a little bit less.
I think you do a majority. I don't know about your other channels, but you do about 20 million per month in views.
Other channels?
Like I don't know if you have other shows. I'm saying
no.
Majority Report does about 20 million.
That's it.
And with 20 million views per month, you do over 6 figures.
We had 20 million views for 2 months this year.
If you do 20 million views per month, I think is your YouTube metric.
Well, I mean, it's a little bit less now, but okay.
Oh yeah. If a company came to you and wanted to license the show, which would
I can tell you, Peacock licensed a Majority Report for we were on Peacock.
$10. Keep shilling Dylan, it's working.
Oh my God, it's working. Gotta hit that shill button more. I gotta shill to survive. I am also heading east this weekend, so if you guys want to help cover the gasoline costs, we're going back to the Pocross axis. That'd be helpful. That would be helpful. These trips are expensive. They're in the thousands of dollars at times. This one will be.
Here,
you want to say what they gave you?
I will tell you this. From what I read, you made more in a month than we made in a year.
Maybe that's just bad business on your part, I guess.
Maybe. Or maybe it turns out that they were just a company who had metrics as opposed to like we're trying to get propaganda.
No, I think. See,
I have a theory.
So I can tell you how much money we make at this company, right?
I would imagine it's millions.
Million per month, maybe.
Okay.
So when a company comes to me and says, we want to have you, who makes, as a company, $1 million a month, a show in which we will have a non-exclusive distribution, but takes the branding, then we're going to say, in 1 or 2 years, how much do we make on this show per month? Well, it's in excess of $400,000.
This was a new show. This was this show, right?
Well, so there's a few caveats. This channel is my first channel. It's got 1.35 million subscribers. It used to be my biggest channel where I would routinely get 500,000 to 1 million per video, or maybe like 600,000 per video on certain shows. And then we're talking about doing a show like this where you'll get, you have 1 million, 1,000,005 subscribers. I've got
God to think all those people. They're like, what? This is all those people when they're asked about Syria, if they're ever in a conversation about it, this is like the base knowledge you're gonna have is Pipelinistan. About Ukraine, it's gonna be his crazy. I weep for the information space.
Got 1 million plus subscribers, or with the other channels, it's big names coming, doing these debates. Tends to attract a lot of sponsorship. So
you had any other deals like this?
Yes.
Oh, you have had other deals like this.
So,
because I seem to remember you saying to Emma that you had not, that it was just all from members, or you didn't have any back
sponsors. There's no backers, right? It's
a license deal is not a sponsorship. Like, I mean, I have sponsors. Like I have. Well, it's different. No
one has come to this company. Let's clarify.
Hello Tushy comes and says we want to sell bidets.
Here's the difference.
I do an ad, but I don't have a license.
No one has come to my companies, plural, and said I will give you X in exchange for X in terms of the production of content or a stake in the company. We have no investors. We have no backing. We have sales.
Have you had other license deals like that? I'm not talking about a sponsor. Tenet Media was not a sponsor.
It was a non-exclusive distribution license.
Yeah, it was a license deal. Yeah. No, I get that. Have you had other license deals like that?
Yes. And so this is not.
With who? Is it another? I mean, I'm just curious.
Well, I got to wait because some of these deals are still in contract negotiation, so I can't.
Oh, so you didn't have any prior to the Tenet, or you did?
I have licensed content to big networks. We have explicitly and on a low scale.
So prior to this, you
Dude, it's not going to be the Russian government. It's going to be the Russian government. It's going to be the Chinese government. It's going to be like the Serbians. It's going to be everyone. Everybody's got a little piece of Tim. 60% of Tim's shareholders is just foreign agents.
had licensed it to other big networks.
I'm confused as what I have licensed my content to other big networks
Prior to the Tenet deal.
Yes. Yes.
Oh,
and we also
what were those networks?
So like Nat Geo and Discovery when they hired me for content.
No, I'm talking about these shows. I'm not talking about when you were, I'm talking about, the whole Timcast world.
Before Tenet, there were 3 negotiations currently taking place. And I can't say too much because I can't violate other contracts. Offers were made.
You're not supposed to tell who you're licensing to?
When you're in contract negotiations, first, you don't go out and just say, hey, guess what this company's offering me right now?
No, of course.
Well, I mean, if they're about to negotiate a contract is one thing, but I thought it was you have also licensed it to other people before.
It's not. Of course not. I'm not asking what you're in negotiations for the future. I'm saying prior.
All right, so let me finish. Yes.
Prior to Tenet Media.
Okay.
Had you had any other license deals?
License deals presented that were comparable, and one was chosen.
Okay,
and some are ongoing.
So you never had any other deals. People had proposed them to you, but you'd never
with
signed
higher
a
rates. We were offered more money from other companies.
And you went with Tenet?
Yes.
For a license deal?
I was offered a license agreement for comparable. I try to keep it vague, I guess, because
so just to be clear, you never signed another deal before Tenet. You had never had a license deal prior to that as Timcast.
No. Okay, look. Yes, I did. I said it like 5 times now.
Oh,
I've licensed content to a ton of networks.
Oh, I was just curious as to what networks those were. I don't know why you're getting so upset.
Because I've said it 5 times. You keep asking the same question over and over again.
You said Nat Geo.
So I've licensed content to like Discovery, Nat Geo, and then there's media buyers who
but not as Timcast.
Yes, just quite literally as Timcast from this channel.
Oh, really? To Nat Geo? Okay.
Yes, and I've even appeared on their networks. So I can say it a million times. We were dealing with negotiations. We give the deal to our lawyers. Our lawyers come back and say, looks good. And then we start, the show already existed.
Yeah, no, I never thought that you, were in the bag for, I never thought they were telling you what to do. I just thought.
Well, they told somebody. I mean, they did funnel stories. We don't know that they funneled any stories to Tim. That wasn't in the report from the DOJ. But it did say that I believe it was Benny Johnson who went out there and started spinning the story that the Moscow mall attack that was done by ISIS was actually done by Ukrainian agents. That was funneled from the handlers at RT through the Lauren Chen all the way around back to Benny Johnson, and then he said it on his show to all of his viewers. So some people were getting funneled stories. I don't know if Tim was one of those people. It's not in the report, so it's up in the air. But I mean, he can just be a Russian stooge, like a useful idiot that they paid off. It doesn't have to be that complex. I don't know if that's really all that much better, especially if you're going to somebody for political commentary.
I thought it was a lot of money to be getting, and not asking who, Gerard Depardieu was or whatever the guy's name, Gregorian.
So the issue I think is worthy of clarification is like you yourself.
I mean, he was getting paid indirectly by the Russians while saying Ukraine is the biggest enemy of America in the world. Not climate change, not the nation that invaded Ukraine that's threatening to blow up the world if they don't get what they want. No, it's Ukraine. The country, and it's the biggest threat because it got invaded after it gave up its atomic weapons. Because we were having people in Congress who were threatening to starve out the nation until they gave them up at the time. They're the biggest threat to the world. It just is so on the nose that your mind cannot help but wander.
Make 6 figures a month on your show.
Well, that's our revenue of the show. I don't make that.
Right, the revenue of this show and otherwise like $1 million doesn't go in my pocket every month, but we have staff and we have employees. And so it's around there. So when a company comes, and we had several, and they say, this is huge. We had a $30
Are
million
you back in
offer.
negotiations with those people?
Yes.
I would imagine.
Especially considering...
It feels like you've had to, like, what was this whole thing? Were you shutting down the show? Or
That's exactly what I was going to say, right? Like, I can't be the CEO, the principal talent, and a dad. It's already difficult to
so
do.
maybe I'm not such a bad businessman.
Maybe you're a good dad.
I got 2 kids, and but whatever. That's it.
Well, so like I've got to record 4 shows today. You know, and that's an impossibility with a kid.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why, like last week, I'm like, I can keep doing the morning show because that will keep me occupied.
You shut down your news operation too, didn't you?
Scanner is still in operation, but it's like...
Didn't you have like a news, like a website or something?
Yeah, we still do. And so there was, we did Timcast News for a while, and then we had another company called Scanner that we are trying to get off the ground, and it's still there, but we're in a holding pattern. Content is still being produced for Scanner, but we have to figure out, like, here's the reality, man. News articles, the news media is a very, very difficult thing to monetize.
Very tough. Very tough.
You can write articles all day and night. You can send reporters on the ground, which we do, and then figuring out how to make that sustainable is incredibly difficult. And it gets to that point where, we can't. But I will say...
Hey, Tim, thanks for shilling for me. Just saying.
Regards to what happened Monday, last week. Oh, yeah. One of the offers we got was $30 million. And it comes with caveats. And so we go to these other companies and say, what are your terms? What are your offers? What are your terms? What are your offers? And then ultimately Tenet we were like, we'll go with them. That's whatever. We go to our lawyer goes through it. We say, all right.
Tenet didn't pay $30 million, did they?
No.
Sounds like they paid a hefty amount. I mean, if you're Dave Rubin, what do you think about that? Like, I mean, if you're Dave Rubin and somebody says, we're going to give you $100,000 a video, doesn't that like make you go like, what's up with this?
No, because what's interesting in the indictment is you can see that independent of each other, several people made the same negotiations. A lot of this goes through agents, and agents go to a market standard rate when you're negotiating.
I mean, I understand. I mean, I've dealt with agents, but I mean,
but you don't set your price. I mean, your agent's going to tell you what you're going to be able to get from something, right? Or do you go to your agent? You could go to your agent and say, I'll only do the job for this amount. I get it. But usually there's, it's going to be like, look, this is the kind of job that's going to pay in a range of here. The company's got this much. Here's what you're going to be able to get for it. So for instance, like 500,000 views might be $10,000 in ads, right?
Okay.
That's market standard. So if you're talking CPM and I call like an ad sales guy and they say, hey, this company wants to sponsor you, you get 500,000 on the show, they're going to give you $10,000. I can say, right, that's the market range. And so then I might try and argue a premium and be like, well, I'm Tim Pool, so I think you should give me 15. And then they'll come back and say, no.
We're not talking about sponsorships.
We're talking about the value of a license agreement where a company would have the ability to run sponsorships on their end.
Right.
So if we're talking about, say, Timcast IRL in the morning show, which we do around $1 million in revenue per month, then a comparable show is you're going to say this when you're licensing a show. If we run the show by ourselves for a year or two, then here's how much we're going to generate in sponsorships, memberships, et cetera, by the end of year 2, 3, 4, and 5. If we do a license deal, we jump the gun. We generate lesser revenue than we would in the long term, but it closes the gap sooner.
No, I get it. I understand why you...
Why are we talking about like what license deals are? He got money from the Russian government. Okay, that's the story in and of itself.
I would take it. I would take that money if somebody came to me and offered that, but I would be like, wait, what's going on here?
But you would be, I mean, we have 3 different companies coming at us. They're all known American enterprises. I mean,
Tenet Media was not a known American enterprise. In fact, it was you, Tim, who made them known. It was you and the others who aided them in credibility.
Left Face TV has donated $5. Get a mod to check out YouTube comments. Gotta at John Wayne being pretty extra there.
At John Wayne. Wow, I thought he was dead. He got some pretty high profile guests in chat. I don't do a lot of moderating of the comments. My gosh. You gotta email me at DylanBurnsTV@gmail.com and point out a comment or two and which videos it is on, and then maybe we'll go check it out. Thank you. I appreciate the report though.
So I will say one thing too, like Lauren Chen's
I'm gonna send Chuck Connors to deal with him.
was working at
Why did I make that reference? Nobody here watches The Rifleman. I grew up with very old people.
the Blaze. You know what I mean? This is not like some strange person appeared out of nowhere.
Raises questions to me about
Was that
where
the Blaze?
I mean,
yeah.
I think, it's quite clear to me that, there was reports about like in the run up to the election, George Santos was on a Zoom call where people were getting paid at least $20,000 to put out stuff that Kamala Harris was a slut on their social media and stuff like that. And
tell you
I'm
the
like,
secret.
I've been doing this for 20 years. And, it's not a huge amount of competition on the left. Nobody's ever offered me $5 to do anything like that.
Let me let you in on the secret. This has been true for a long time. So your revenue for Majority Report, is it largely YouTube based, or do you do like ad reads as well?
It's ad reads, it's members, it's YouTube.
You have YouTube programmatic, so do we. Like programmatic ads means like your YouTube channel will show you how much you made from YouTube's ads.
Yes.
So Russia can go on your YouTube channel through Google Ads and put $10,000 a month into your channel without you knowing.
Okay.
I'm sorry. What is this? Anyone could just find Russian money just in their channel at any time. Really, it's all the same, actually. It's not that crazy that I took that money. Dude, come on. Just stop just flailing around like a fish on this. Just be like, yeah, we should have Googled who he was, and we should have looked more into it when the money was being offered, and, we're going to do that more in the future. Is that really that hard to say? You don't need to make a big thing out of it. I mean, anyone could. People should, but just some responsibility. No, honestly, it's not my fault because anyone could have taken Russian money.
And you'd have no way to track or control any of that. So this.
It's okay. This
does happen though, where companies, politicians will use some kind of special interest, and you can run an ad for any product you want, which is the crazy thing.
Well, yeah, this is what Trump is doing with his watches, right? Like, I'm going to sell 147 watches at whatever it was, 10 grand a pop. And it's basically a way for people to launder money.
Listening to this weasel takes more energy than I have. Good luck on your trip.
Mamuka, thank you so much. I appreciate the 20. Is that Canadian? Well, thank you, my Canuck friend. I appreciate that. Good luck. I'll try to, I'll keep an eye out, okay? That's all I can promise. I'll keep an eye out.
Money to him because it's like, all right, I just bought a watch. And that's basically it. And so he knows.
You're allowed to buy watches.
Maybe
we should regulate politicians selling products during elections.
I think that would be a great idea. And maybe while they're president as well. But I know
I bought his shoes.
What's that?
I bought his shoes. We were skating in them. Let's talk about like abortion or something. I don't know. Or Israel.
We can talk about Israel if you want. I mean,
Okay, we'll talk about something else then, Tim. Not the Russian money.
I'm of the mind of, what we're doing is obscene. And
I think we did an hour and a half. We got halfway through this. Oh, man. So, assessment. Honestly, I thought it was going to be more hostile. Sam's not a yeller. He's kind of like passively going at him in a way. And when I say passively going at him, it's like simple speaking voice, with ums and ahs in between, as Sam Seder does, throwing his critiques or disagreements at Tim. And so I guess it kept it more cordial. I know that the audience despised Sam. We didn't look at the chat replay, but man, they didn't like him. They did not like him at all. Like they thought he was smug. They thought he was annoying. I think honestly, Sam showed a pretty good showing. I think that they were able to find some common ground. So if he was able to reach to anybody out in that crowd, he was maybe able to move him a little bit, especially if you can get Tim Pool on board. I think the Pipelinistan stuff, Sam just didn't have the ammunition for. I think that the tenant media stuff. I mean, just getting Tim to talk about it. I think there's a success the more he talks about it in and of itself, just because of the hope he's going to drop a new kernel of truth. Like when they were going back and forth about licenses, it kind of got a little, I didn't get spicy or anything, but it got weirdly murky very quickly. But, I don't really have much more to say about this. I think he performed his best in the healthcare portion. I think Sam did his best there. I think he laid it out clearly.
A curd is a curd.